The best place to hide the truth is in the pages of a book.
Maybe we should just read. Maybe we should just read.
Welcome to Hayes Reviews. Hello everybody, this is Nick, creator of Hayes Reviews. We're back for another live stream, live reading tonight, Friday. What is the date? 13th, Friday the 13th of June, 2025. But it doesn't have to be an unlucky day. It doesn't have to be a day when bad things happen. It can be a day when we do some learning, some growing, when we gain some understanding, when we do a little bit of critical thinking, maybe apply some of our logical, analytical skills to the headlines and to the contents of a book. So very happy to have you here tuning in live. We've already got an active chat over on YouTube, which is lovely. Tammy just showed up, Frank and Blake as well. If you're tuning in on the replay, please remember that there is a pinned comment below the video with timestamps, and you can use that to pop around to the part of the video that piques your interest. Follow your curiosity. It's a good way to go through life, especially when you're learning about these kinds of topics. So I hope you can all hear me and see me, and everything looks good on my end. It's a really hot day in England, and my little stuffy room full of books with the window closed is turning into a bit of a sauna with the lights on as well. So excuse me if I start to glisten a little bit, but it's lovely. The sun's out, the days are nice and long, the birds are chirping, doing what they do, and I like this time of year. It's kind of a time of year where we can soak up some sunshine, where you can see plants growing. People just tend to be in better mood than they are in winter, at least in England. People aren't suffering from so much vitamin D deficiency. Their immune systems are a little strengthened, more robust, and people on the whole treat each other better because they feel better, because they feel healthier. And I think that's a causality that is often overlooked in this day and age. People expect to feel good when they're not healthy. They treat themselves badly, they don't move around enough, they don't eat the right things, they don't get enough rest, and then they wonder why they feel like crap all the time, and then they blame the people around them or the circumstances they find themselves in, and they tend to see themselves as a victim. If you don't have a nice foundational bedrock of health upon which to build the other aspects of your life, then it's going to be much, much harder. So for all of you who have the opportunity, I hope you're making the most of the good weather, getting that sunshine and vitamin D, eating a steak here and there, trying not to get too many seed oils inside you. Avoid the microplastics if you can. That's harder and harder these days. Definitely avoid the nanotech, Don't go anywhere near that. And hopefully they're not spraying the skies too heavily where you are. That's all I got to say really about that. That's my health tip. That's my safety moment for tonight's broadcast. In some corporations and companies, they insist that every meeting has to start with a safety moment, and they'll tell you something kind of mundane and obvious, like drink 8 glasses of water every day, or look left, look right, look left again when you cross the street, unless you're in America, in which case you want to start by looking right, because they drive on the opposite side of the road there. These kind of little tips and tidbits of information, that's mine for today, okay? Take good care of yourself. And if you're struggling with anything, if you've got some mental health issue going on, if you've got some overwhelm, some anxiety, some depression, some loneliness, the first question you got to ask is, am I taking care of my health in the best way that I could be? Are there things I'm doing that are unhealthy? Do I have bad habits I need to get rid of? Could I get more fresh air and sunlight? Could I improve the quality of my sleep? These are really impactful ways to improve those other things, those other mental health conditions and emotional challenges, because emotions are really built on health. And for those of you who don't know, the gut is kind of like a second brain. A lot of your, I think most, if not all of your serotonin is produced inside your gut. So the health of your microbiome, the quality of the things passing through there, their state of decay, and in some cases putrefaction and fermentation, all that goes on in there. Paying attention to that, understanding it, recognizing that really we're just tubes with a set of teeth on the end, and everything that between our mouth and our anus is actually technically on the outside of our body, right? Because that's just a tube that goes all the way through, and that's technically not inside you, it's on the outside of you. And that's the main way that things, toxicity, foreign objects, all that gets into our system, into our bloodstream, and causes chaos and havoc. So you've really got to look after your gut health. It's the lining on your gut is 1 cell thick. It's very thin. And if it's broken, if it's punctured, if it has holes, then it lets undigested food through, otherwise known as feces. That gets into your bloodstream, that travels around your body and builds up in different parts of your different, what am I trying to say here? Organs, and causes all sorts of problems. And isn't that a lovely way to kick off the live stream tonight? But it's true. It's worth knowing all that and investigating it and looking into it. I always recommend the book Gut and Psychology Syndrome by Natasha Campbell McBride as a great place to get the lowdown on all that sort of stuff. But we're not here to talk about that tonight. We're here to talk about Vernon Coleman's book, Endgame, The Hidden Agenda 21. This is part 9 in our reading. We've got a decent way through the book at this point. We're doing well. And you can see we've probably got, I don't know, maybe another 3 broadcasts left until we get this finished. After this book, we're going to be reading Between Two Ages by Zbigniew Brzezinski on the channel. That's coming up next. So it's going to be quite a shift in gears, I think, because Vernon Coleman's book is entertaining. It's pithy. It's kind of satirical. It's humorous. But it's deadly serious as well. It's written in a conversational style. It's written in the way that he gave his speeches when he did his talks from his chair, and that kept many of us sane throughout the lockdowns. And it was written during the lockdowns. And it's great to read it because it's kind of a contemporary piece of evidence. Because a lot of us now, we've moved on from the lockdowns and the Big C event, and we're focusing on all these other crazy things that are going on everywhere. And we kind of forget that there was this global scam rolled out everywhere all at once, and by all the world's governments, pretty much. And it was crazy. And it caused a lot of harm, a lot of damage, and the harm and the damage was not justified. Nobody has been held to account for the way we were treated during that time. Things have just moved on. We've been given new things to be concerned about, new things to worry about, new geopolitical events to focus on, new characters to argue about, new issues to take our attention away from the fact that we were all bullied, coerced, threatened to stay at home for the best part of 3 years. And then on top of that, they rolled out an experimental injection to most of the world's population, and the effects of that are still unknown and trying to be understood. Now, I don't think the injections have wiped out as many people as some were claiming, but the truth is that we don't know the truth. We don't know what was in them. We don't know if there were different recipes used in different areas, and all the sort of health effects that have manifested and appeared in our lives, and those that we can see around us, family, friends, colleagues. A lot of people don't make any connection to that experimental injection that they took 2 or 3 years ago. And that blows my mind, because that causality needs to be investigated and understood and taken into account, right? When people are experiencing sudden onset of dementia or cancer that comes out of nowhere and just appears overnight and has to be treated aggressively, or some degenerative blood condition in a young, otherwise healthy 20-year-old and nobody says, hey, what about those experimental injections we all took a few years ago? Maybe that has something to do with it. There's a real severe kind of society-wide cognitive dissonance happening. And so we try to keep these conversations going, keep the awareness raised, and we look to people like Vernon Coleman, who wrote this book during that whole event. It gives us a window into what that was like for those of us who may have forgotten or moved on or be thinking about other things in this day and age. Because, of course, life never stops, and it is always giving us lots of new things to think about and focus on. But thank you for joining me tonight. I just see we got a Smiley Day full as well. I'll pronounce your name properly from now on. I'm not going to stick with my mispronunciation from last week, but good to have you here. Saying, evening all, it's me, Asmelia, and I've ordered a book. Whether I'll read it is another thing. Don't worry about reading it. That's my advice. Just buy them and hoard them. And then one day you can curse your descendants by having them sort through them all and probably just end up giving them to Oxfam. So, why wouldn't you not want to do that? Good to have you here. Tammy says, I'll never forget. I'm glad to hear that. I think none of us should ever forget because it was a crazy time and it was horrific. And we're still dealing with the fallout of that whole event, whatever its nature, purpose, intention was. Of course, the hot topic now is the Davos meeting. No, the Bilderberg meetings are underway, and they've published a list of topics that they're going to discuss. And among those topics is depopulation. Yes, they've just come out and said it. They don't say the depopulation that we are planning and enacting. They don't really go into the cause. They just sort of acknowledge it. To me, I read it as this thing is happening. How can we make sure it doesn't affect our bottom line? That's what I imagine these psychopaths are discussing. They're looking at it from a business point of view, and they're sort of saying, a lot of people are going to be dead very soon. How do we make sure we can continue to profit from the ones that remain? And I think AI, digital slavery system of some description is going to play a role in that. So I've got a bit of a preamble ramble prepared for you tonight. I say a bit of one. It's actually really long. I've got loads of stuff to get through. So let's get into it. Can you still hear me? Oh, yes, you can. Good. So we've got quite a number of topics coming up tonight. We've got, as you know, the book is alphabetical. So we're going to be going through O and P, all being well. And one of the topics that is coming up tonight in the book is population. And another one is overpopulation. So I did a little scan for some news stories that might bear some relation to this topic of population and overpopulation and depopulation, as the Bilderberg attendees are, I don't know if their meeting's underway right now, but they're certainly getting together either now or sometime soon to talk about depopulation. So there's population, overpopulation, depopulation. It's it's a hot topic, and it's multifaceted, and there's a lot of different aspects that go into it. And we have to, when we're looking at mainstream sources such as The Guardian, guarding us, what a noble effort, guarding us from who exactly? Or maybe The Guardian is actually guarding the useless elitists from us. I think that's probably more likely how to read it, right? They're guarding the truth by misdirecting us and filling our heads with a lot of other stuff that's kind of irrelevant and confusing and sensational. But this headline caught my attention, so I thought we'd dive in here as a starting point. So it's society may have overestimated risk of the manosphere, UK researchers say. It says many who engage are discriminating and value-driven, with a minority consuming extremely misogynistic content. That's the study results. So this is after the TV show Adolescence has been hyped and talked about and watched everywhere and discussed by the Prime Minister and discussed in Parliament. After the hype, after the painting of young teenage boys who are white as being the main problem because they spend time online unsupervised, and this makes them go out and stab girls. Don't really question the logic or the connection or the causality there too much. That's just what happens. After painting that picture and getting everybody to watch it, even people who don't like watching that kind of thing, they'll hear about it and they want to watch it and they go and check it out. I watched it. Now they're saying, oh, actually, yeah, we might have overestimated the risk there. Maybe that's not the risk after all. So it's nice to see them correct it after the fact, but they always do this. They always push the sensationalism. They put the idea out there into the culture. They get people to repeat it. They get people whipped up into a frenzy. And then later on, quietly, it's like, oh, yeah, actually, that thing we got you all scared of is not that big a deal. By which point, the damage is done. But let's have a look at this study that they've done. The study involved a whopping 38 men. And and it also, there's a little side note here which gave me a chuckle. And more misogynistic men may have declined to take part. Just add that in there. Like, we got 38 men to take part, but the really misogynistic ones may have decided not to. So bear that in mind. It's kind of like it's casting a little bit of doubt on the result of the article, isn't it? Just saying that the misogynistic men, they declined. But the article says, men who engage in the online manosphere and the content of Andrew Tate are often able to express strong commitment to equal treatment and fairness. Well, I bet they really hated having to print that. I'm not a fan of Andrew Tate. I think the guy is a construct of some kind, and I've spent basically zero time on any of his content or the stuff he says. I don't really understand. I think he's artificially put out there for a purpose, and this is part of that purpose. It says that researchers for the UK communications regulator followed the journeys of dozens of men through online content ranging from US podcaster Joe Rogan to forums for incels. And the incels means involuntary celibates, so people who can't get laid. It says men who can't get laid. It says many users of the manosphere were critically engaged, selective, and capable of discarding messages that did not resonate with their values. Wow, what a shocking revelation. There are men who can critically engage with ideas and content and discard the stuff that is stupid, nonsensical, and designed to entrap them, and that is hard. People can think, and the people who go outside the mainstream tend to be wider, deeper, better thinkers than the people who sit in the mainstream. People who sit in the mainstream tend to be, I think of them as like the herd of sheep or other, domesticated animals. The farmer comes along, puts the bucket of food on the floor, and then they all come in and eat the bucket of food. because it's the mainstream. It's the easiest to access. It's the thing most people look at. People like safety in numbers. They like to think the same as everybody around them because that reinforces and validates that the way they think is the correct way to think. So that's kind of how I think of it. Now, if you are seeing that happen, you're seeing the farmer come along with the bucket and he's putting it down, and you've probably worked out that the farmer is going to slaughter you at some point and chop you up and sell you. Then you go, maybe I'm not going to eat that stuff that farmer's giving me. Maybe I'm going to look for a gap in the fence that I can escape through. That's the people who go outside of the mainstream and end up in places like the quote unquote manosphere, whatever that is. Joe Rogan and Joe Rogan is not part of the manosphere, right? He is a man, but he has all kinds of guests on there. He's had plenty of women on his show, right? Forums for involuntary celibates. I have no idea what's going on there. I've never been in them. I don't know how prominent they are. Are they really a real deal? I don't know. Whatever. Are they? It could just be it's full of bots. It could be that it's full of feds, like GCHQ, MI5 type people, 77th Brigade, FBI, CIA, all these people who go online and pretend to be real people to entrap and ensnare innocent people. That's a thing, and that happens. So I'm not sure about that aspect of it. But there's this thing allegedly called the manosphere. And this study found out that the people who are engaged, they're not actually horrible, misogynistic, women-hating psychopaths. They're actually critically engaged, selective, and capable of discarding messages that don't resonate with their values. They're value-driven. So what a surprise. Bet nobody saw that coming. going on, it says they found it was far from a unified community. Yeah. So this is the thing. It's not a unified community because the manosphere isn't a thing. Whoa. Something just fell over behind me. It's not a unified community because the manosphere isn't a thing, right? Somebody's come along and said, oh, this is the manosphere. And all the people in that are going, no, we're not a community. We're a whole different bunch of people. Like, we're into this thing, that group's into their thing. We're Joe Rogan fans. You know, these people over here are incels. These people over here are pickup artists or whatever. So they've just grouped together a load of smaller groups and called it a group. And then they've studied it and gone, oh, it's not a unified community. I wonder how much money was spent on this study. That's what I want to know. It says several participants were drawn to it by its perceived humor. Perceived humor, not real humor, not actual humor, not jokes. It's just perceived humor. It's not real humor. But open debate, you know, that's a marker and a sign of a thinker. Somebody who goes and seeks out open debate. They're not going to just accept what they're told to believe and think. They want to test that idea out, right? Irreverence also, and then also connecting with views they found about traditional gender roles and family dynamics. Yeah, so it's actually pretty hard to find places online where traditional gender roles and family dynamics are encouraged or protected or supported or praised or defended, right? Most of the time, most of what we get in our media is, and you'll see this a little bit later in an upcoming article for this little intro, is very against the traditional gender roles and the family dynamics, you know? So no surprise that people who actually want to maybe, I want to be a dad and I want to have a loving wife who wants to take care of the house and look after the kids while I'm away at work earning money. You get told you're a bad person for wanting that, or it's implied that actually that is not a 2025 way of doing things. It says, many of the participants expressed a strong commitment to equal treatment and fairness. They showed particular sensitivity to situations they perceived as unjust or discriminatory, and this extended to issues specifically concerning men. So actually, these sound like pretty decent people overall. The report's author told The Guardian, it suggests society has overestimated the risk posed by the manosphere. Well, yeah. I mean, the whole purpose of that adolescence nonsense and other films that I've seen, I saw one recently. It was called Fair Play. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's on Netflix, and it's about a couple. They both work at the same place. The girl gets promoted, and then the guy goes crazy. He's jealous. He's petty. He becomes pathetic. He can't take it. He can't deal with his partner getting this promotion. He goes into the spiral. Their whole relationship breaks down, and then she ends by kicking him out. She kicks him out and makes him get on his knees and apologize and grovel and confess to being a weak POS. And then she goes and has a successful corporate career in some sort of hedge fund management type role. And that's the film. So this adolescence and this film that I just mentioned is painting this picture of this risk posed from the manosphere, but it's all largely artificial. That's not where the danger is coming from. And we're going to have a little hint later on in the intro about where the danger might actually be coming from. So Blake says, there's some great content in the manosphere. You got to sift through to find what resonates with you and take caution for the hopelessly incelibate who can't help themselves. Well, I think there's good content anywhere you go, right? Because it all depends on the individual that you're listening to and their values and their ability to communicate ideas and to put information out that is non-contradictory, that is helpful. So for me, I don't even really know what the manosphere is. If Joe Rogan's the manosphere, then I've spent a bit of time there, you know. I haven't battered a woman or murdered a woman yet, so I think it can't all be that bad. But these going on with the study in the article, it says separate expert studies have found some evidence that the language of the manosphere can escalate into physical violence. So if that's not a wishy-washy sentence, I don't know what is. Separate, they're experts. Expert studies have found some evidence, well, how much, that this language can escalate into physical violence. Okay, so how much evidence and at what rate does it escalate into physical violence? Because that could be, they found one blog from a guy who went home and punched his girlfriend in the face once. They could have found one example of that, and that sentence could be included in this article off the back of one blog post by a guy who was violent to one woman. You see what I mean? So it's, you gotta look at the language here. They're even still trying to plant the seed that the manosphere is full of misogynistic, violent women haters, despite reporting on a study that disproves that. The Ofcom study involved 38 men, and again, more misogynistic men may have declined to take part. So they're still trying to plant that seed. And then this bit's very good too. So it breaks down some of the subcultures in the manosphere, including red pill and black pill. So did you know that red pill is men who believe the world is unfair to men? That's what red pill means. I have a feeling the author of this article either hasn't seen The Matrix, definitely hasn't been to G. Edward Griffin's Red Pill University and Red Pill Expo websites. Red pill does not mean men who believe the world is unfair to men. I mean, red pill comes from the Matrix, right? So even the first instance of it was the blue pill and the red pill. And the red pill was say goodbye to the lies and say hello to the truth. I choose the truth. I want to know the truth no matter what it is. That's what the red pill stood for. It's in the film. But now apparently it is men who believe the world is unfair to men. And then there's black pill, which apparently means unattractive men who have very limited options for relationships. So I don't, that, again, it's associating this term red pill with something else, so that normal people who read this, when they see red pill, when they see G. Edward Griffin's Red Pill Expo or his Red Pill University, they're going to be like, oh, I know what that's all about. That's about men who think the world's unfair to men. But obviously the world's perfectly fair to men because we live in a patriarchy and men have it easy. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to do anything dangerous or risky. They just get to sit at home, chill out, relax, play computer games, and smoke weed. So I'm not going to pay any attention to that red pill content because I know that that's all stupid stuff. I read about it in The Guardian. So that's the red pill and the black pill. There's also MGTOW, which is men going their own way. There's also incels. There's pickup artist and looks maxing. I never heard of looks maxing, but that's apparently taking care of your appearance and trying to be more sexually appealing. So yeah, well, I mean, why not, right? If you want to find a mate, you're going to have to be appealing. So groups that help men do that, I don't think that seems like such a bad thing. But what's interesting is the things that get lumped in to this list. And you'll see I've highlighted them a different color on the screen here. But as well as red pill, black pill, MGTOW, incels, pickup artists, and looks maxing, we've also got men's rights activists, self-improvement, masculinity, and gender politics. Now, these are two very distinct groups of things, to my mind, right? Men's rights activists, just like you want women's rights activists, you want men's rights activists, okay? Self-improvement. Everybody could do with a little bit of self-improvement. None of us are perfect. We could all do with a little help, love, support, compassion, kindness, patience to more completely embody our potential, right? But they've lumped that stuff in, the good stuff, the potentially good stuff anyway, with this manosphere subculture of incel, pickup artist, looks maxing, black pill, red pill people. So it's kind of insidious the way they've done it. And they haven't really separated out the two, right? So they leave you with this idea that, oh, men's rights activists are actually misogynistic. Down here it says, again, the research has suggested that society has overestimated the risk of the manosphere. It's not zero risk, but most of it doesn't have the power to radicalize people. So that's good news. The research examined the attitudes of men who have become involved in several different corners of the manosphere, from relatively mainstream content creators such as Piers Morgan to more niche groups, such as those that talk about being quote-unquote red-pilled. Again, just a misdirect, making you not look into anybody that uses that red pill image, because usually, most of the time, they're using it to denote truth and rejection of the comfortable lies that we are surrounded by. This bit was interesting. One survey participant's pathway into the MGTOW began with him being intentionally misidentified as a child's father, which is known as paternity fraud. So this is the part of the puzzle that I was surprised they even mentioned, but it's that sometimes men are victims, and they're victims of lies, and they're victims of false allegations, and they're victims of, as in this case, paternity fraud, right? This man, Richard, he became involved in supporting other victims and came to believe that feminist ideology runs through the court's system. He stopped dating and said, once you've red-pilled about all this, you can't a competent man who can't form a grammatically correct sentence. But it was just interesting that at least they acknowledge that some people get driven into this whole area by things such as paternity fraud and the way that courts can be weaponized to strip men of their assets and force them to pay really hefty amounts of money in terms of child support and alimony, depending on what country you're living in, etc. So I was surprised to see that paragraph in there, to be honest, but they kind of gloss over it quite quick. And then they balance it with another guy, Matt, who says the MGTOW influencers prey on any amount of bitterness and resentment you have in your life. I don't know if that's true. I've never hung out with the MGTOW crowd. Ofcom says a minority of participants described encountering extremely misogynistic content online, with the most extreme examples more likely to be found on closed groups or among incel communities. So the extremely misogynistic content is in closed groups. It's hidden. It's hard to find. And it's just a bunch of, probably, my guess is intelligence, assets, and agents stirring up this kind of stuff to see who they can snare with it. I bet there's a lot of that going on. But The Guardian would never admit to that, of course. The final quote here is, these spaces were notably full of messages promoting black pill concepts of self-loathing and hopelessness, as well as depressive and even suicidal outlooks. Like, my concept of black pill is more like when people do so much reading and research into the agendas that we're living through that they become hopeless and despondent and say, oh, there's nothing we can do. They got it all locked down, from the culture creation to the financial system to the politics to the what's left, medical system. They've got it all locked down. It's all under control. It is all co-opted. It's all been designed, and it's all getting plugged in. The internet, the social media, the big tech, the social credit, the CCTV systems, the data gathering, all of it adds up to one big insurmountable system that can never be defeated, and that's what I understand to be black pill. But of course, to give that definition of black pill, you would have to explain all of the overlooked realities of the systems that we live in, where they come from, their history, their track record. So they give this kind of false version of what black pill means, and they just say, oh, it's just people who hate themselves and they're hopeless. So, interesting article. And the thing that really stood out to me about this article is that nowhere at all do they mention pornography. Nowhere. Like, it's not even a thing. They're talking about the internet's effect on men and men's attitudes to women, and they don't even talk about porn. Probably just an accident, though, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah, they probably just, I know. It's an easy thing to overlook. It's not like everyone has constant 100% unlimited access to pornography at any time of the day, no matter your age. It's not like that could be having any effect on misogyny and the way women are treated, could it? No, of course not. But in the article, it did mention at some point, I think I might have glossed over it, but it did mention that violence is rising against women and girls, which is quite curious. So there's a link here to the House of Commons Library website, research briefing from this year, January. The nature and scale of violence against women and girls. And right at the top here, it's the first sentence, which links it to the book we're reading tonight, is The UN Declaration on the Elimination of Violence Against Women defines violence against women as. So right at the very top of this research, they are calling upon the UN, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, and which is the source of the Agenda 21 that Vernon Coleman's talking about in his book that we're reading, right? The nature and scale of violence against girls and women. So here's the definition. Any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or in private life. Okay, so it's quite wordy, quite long, but physical, sexual, psychological harm, violence. Examples: rape, stalking, domestic abuse, intimate image abuse. That's a new one. FGM, forced marriage. So the quote is that women are more likely to have experienced violent crime. A higher proportion of women experienced domestic abuse, stalking, and sexual assault and harassment in the last year compared with men. So men don't get abused, stalked, assaulted, and harassed as much as women. That's not really a headline. However, men accounted for a higher proportion of victims of violence with and without injury where the perpetrator was a stranger. So there's twice as many men getting attacked by strangers as there are women getting attacked by strangers. So that's quite an important admission and something to think about and bear in mind there as well. It says, in the year ending March 2024, there had been 2,755 so-called honour-based offences in England and Wales. Okay, this might be giving us a little clue as to where this violence is largely coming from. Honor-based offences. I don't know exactly what culture practices honor-based offences which leads to violence against women. But I don't know, I could guess. It's not mentioned here, unfortunately. It'd be good if they clarify what an honor-based offence is and who is going out there carrying these honor-based offences out, right? But no further details on that, so we'll have to carry on not knowing. It says this data is defined as, so the honor-based offence is defined as an incident or crime involving violence, threats, intimidation, coercion, or abuse, which has or may have been committed to protect or defend the honour of an individual, family, or community for alleged or perceived breaches of the family and or community's code of behavior. That just seems like a strange thing to be included here. And I'd like to know which communities, which demographics are carrying out this sort of thing. I'd just like to know that. I got my suspicions. Carrying on, it says that there's around 3,000 offences each day, and the data also found that recorded related crime increased 37% between 2018 and 2023. So that bit stood out to me, like, oh, so violence against women increased by nearly 40% between 2018 and 2023. Oh, wasn't that about the time that the government terrorized the whole population of the country, forced them to stay at home, threatened them, coerced them, drove wedges between marriages, between friendships, between professional relationships, between men and women, by bombarding them day and night with scary images and graphs and threats and confusing rules that didn't make any sense, and psychological manipulation that was designed to increase feelings of stress and insecurity and fear and paranoia. Didn't they do that? I think they did do that, didn't they? And what time was it that they were doing that to us? Oh, that was kind of 2020 to 2023. So the back end of this little 5-year stretch that they're focusing on here. Could that have anything to do with this 37% increase in violence against women and girls? Probably not. Probably just coincidence. So going down here, it says there's a Safer Streets Fund. It says by August 2024, £159 million has been invested in crime prevention measures, including more CCTV, of course, because all the CCTV we've got and the crime has carried on increasing. Therefore, we need more CCTV. We need more of the thing that isn't preventing the thing from going up. Perfect logic. And we're also getting more street lighting, and you can be rest assured that that is going to be, this horrible white LED smart lights that gather data on you and make the whole place look just uncomfortable and kind of creepy as well. Oh, we've got the Outsiders Outlier over on Odyssey. How's it going, my friend? Who says, Hegelian dialectic. Well, you got lots of comments over there. I'm not going to read those all right now, but thank you for hanging out. So, the end-to-end rape review. Now, this just seemed a little bit unfortunately named to me, but maybe it wasn't an accident, But it's the end-to-end rape review. And this was June 2021. The Conservative government published this review, which set out a range of actions aimed at returning the number of rape cases reaching court back to 2016 levels. So they're not eliminating rape. They're not getting rid of it altogether. They don't want to stop it. They don't want to make sure that it doesn't happen at all. They just want to reduce the number of cases that get to court back to 2016 levels. You read? Am I reading that right? That's all they cared about, right? So they're going to implement something that stops rape cases reaching court, not get rid of the amount of rape or reduce the amount of rape. They just want to stop that number of rape cases reaching court and reduce the number of cases that make it to court. Presumably, the judges and the barristers, they're all a bit tired and overworked, and they need a rest. They don't want to process and do so many rape cases, and we need to help them out a little bit. So thank you, Conservative government, for that. It's very kind of you. What about the Labour government? Well, in 2024, their manifesto pledged that a Labour government would halve violence against women and girls in a decade by using every government tool available to target perpetrators and address the root causes of abuse and violence. So isn't it good that we just found out that the manosphere is not a root cause of abuse and violence against women? But I have a feeling that when they do an investigation and they find out what the actual cause is, that they might just look the other way, because it'll be a bit inconvenient to other parts of the things that Labour has promised to do. The manifesto also included specific pledges to ban the creation of sexually explicit deep fakes. Right. Okay. So another one that again, that's kind of a bit like, well, we'll reduce the number of rape cases that make it to court. We're going to ban the creation of deepfakes that are sexually explicit. Brilliant. Thanks, Labour. It's great to know that you are out there protecting our girls and our women. So this is going to be some sort of legislation controlling AI and access to software, probably requiring digital ID, permissioning, and some sort of restriction on who gets to use this kind of stuff, because, oh, well, if it gets into the wrong hands, they could make sexually explicit deepfakes. And, that might cause violence and against women somehow. So, yeah, just strange pledges, and to me, it feels like they got their eyes in the wrong place. They're not looking at this properly, seriously. But here's the United Nations document that was mentioned at the very beginning of this page on the House of Commons library. So this shows you that they're building their policy and their research and their pledges on the UN and what the UN says. Both Conservative and Labour, right? We just saw that in this page, the Conservative and Labour have plans, have policies, have pledges, things that they're going to do. Both of them are built on United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development type policy. This is the thing that we've been talking about a lot on the channel, and that we try and get through to people, is it doesn't matter which way you vote. There is a organization above and beyond and outside that is calling the shots. This is from 23rd of February 1994. 48th session, agenda item 111. It's not that interesting, to be honest. Doesn't say anything about getting rid of pornography, though, because that's never mentioned. That's never part of the problem. Porn's never part of the problem. It's amazing. But this article in The Guardian, which came out today, might help us understand a little bit about what's going on in this with this increase in violence against women and girls that the UK government is so committed to preventing. So this article says 7 men who groomed vulnerable girls in Rochdale guilty of multiple sex offenses. The jury returned unanimous guilty verdicts for 50 offenses committed between 2001 and 2006. So don't worry, girls, if you are currently being molested and abused and groomed. It will only take about 20 years for your persecutors to be held to account and for justice to be served. Only 20 years. And actually, we're gonna, if the Conservatives get back in, they're gonna reduce the number of these cases that get in front of courts. So you're looking at maybe 20 to 30 years, give or take, depending on how the elections go, right? But yeah, Asmelia makes a good point over on YouTube there. Look at some of these fellas. So, this is 7 men who groomed 2 vulnerable teenage girls in Rochdale. After a 4-month trial and 3 weeks of deliberation, a jury on Friday returned unanimous guilty verdicts for 50 offenses committed between 2001 and 2006. Now, I haven't paid that much attention to the whole Rochdale grooming gang fiasco, but I was kind of surprised that how long ago these crimes took place and how long it's taken to get him arrested. Considering that you could put a tweet up or you could say some hurty words on Facebook and have the police round your house in a matter of hours. When it comes to actually protecting the country's girls from violence and abuse, it takes 20 years. That's where we're at. So it says 3 of the abusers, Mohammed Zahid, Mushtaq Ahmed, and Kasir Bashir, all born in Pakistan, were stall holders at Rochdale's indoor market. Zahid, he's a father of 3. He was known as boss or boss man. That's unusual. I'm usually boss. When I get in a taxi or when I go into a toilet in a nightclub, I'm usually boss. He stole my nickname. But he was giving away free underwear to the 2 girls, as well as money, alcohol, and food, and in return expected them to have regular sex with him and his friends. Zahid was jailed for 5 years in 2016 as part of a different case, right? He was found guilty of sexual assault of a child after he engaged in sexual activity in 2006 with a 15-year-old girl. So he's got a bad track record. Bashir did not attend the 2025 trial, and jurors were ordered not to speculate why. Isn't that weird? Hey, Johnny Fogg, what's going on? Emma Royd, good to see you. Hello. Jurors were ordered not to speculate why he didn't attend the trial. I think it's pretty easy to figure out why he didn't attend the trial, because he was guilty as fuck and he was going to get banged up and put in a cage. But do not speculate. Whatever you do, no imagination, no guesswork here. This is a court of law. We work only on facts. It's crazy. It says that he absconded while on bail before the trial began. So that's definitely the actions of an innocent man, isn't it? A 7th defendant, Pakistani-born Rohiz Khan, 39, was also convicted in a previous trial. In 2013, he was one of 5 men convicted of sexually exploiting a profoundly vulnerable 15-year-old girl. He was jailed for 6.5 years for engaging in sexual activity with a child and witness intimidation. Girl A, so I think this is the girl, the same profoundly vulnerable 15-year-old girl. Girl A told the jury she could have been targeted by more than 200 offenders, but There was so many, it was hard to keep count. The trial heard that social workers in Rochdale had labelled girl B a prostitute from the age of 10. So Rochdale social workers are going around calling 10-year-olds prostitutes. Oh, what can you do? She's choosing. She's an empowered woman. She's choosing to have a career. What an enterprising young woman, getting out there, working hard, having a career, living the dream. Who are we to get in the way of that? Probably cheering her on. All the perpetrators were prosecuted as part of Operation Lytton, which is an investigation that has been running since 2015 by Greater Manchester Police into non-recent child sexual exploitation in Rochdale. This is interesting because there's just been a new series released on Netflix called Department Q. And this is all about, it's an Englishman. He's living in Scotland. He's a bit of a, he's just a nasty piece of work, but he's like a brilliant detective, you know, a bit like Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. Hates people, but great at solving crime. And he is given all these closed cases that have never been solved, and he starts to open them and investigate them. Similar kind of concept to this here. I always get interested when fiction and reality mirror each other in this way, right? But what a strange operation to be running. Non-recent child sexual exploitation. So, I mean, it's great that they're doing this, but are they catching the current recent child sexual exploitation as well? That's my question. So I'm glad Operation Lytton exists. I want justice for the people who never had it, of course. But 20 years is way too long. That backlog is ridiculous. It really is. So I hope there's efforts being put into getting justice for the people who are being falling victim to this, you know, as we speak, because I'm sure it's continuing. It says 37 individuals have been charged so far, with 5 more trials scheduled to take place from September onwards. So it's progress of a kind. Now, this article in The Spectator is links as well. There is a thread running through all these articles, even though they kind of seem a little bit disparate. Remember, the first article was all about, it turns out it's not the manosphere where the misogynistic hatred and violence against women is coming from, even though that's the idea we put out there with the TV show and the mass advertising. Because the guys who made that adolescence TV show, they were being interviewed everywhere. Everybody was talking about it. And it just became this hot thing. Keir Starmer was asked about it, and it was ridiculous because the whole thing was a piece of fiction. It was just all made up. It wasn't based on reality at all. But it painted this picture that it's men who are looking into self-improvement, who are red-pilled, that are causing violence against women to increase, right? But then we read an article like this, and we're like, maybe it's not those guys after all. Maybe it's a different set of men, right? Yes, men, but which men? Is it the ones that are like looking to Joe Rogan, who advocates lifting weights and exercising and taking care of your health, you know? Or is it a different group of men who probably have never listened to a Joe Rogan episode in their entire life, but are standing around handing out knickers to teenage girls on Rochdale open market, you know? But this is another angle, another aspect of the problem. And if you remember at the very beginning, I was talking about the topic coming up tonight is population, overpopulation, and the Bilderbergers have been talking about depopulation. Well, this all relates to that because the core thing about population levels is a very, very simple and often overlooked formula. And it's very simple. It goes like this. Man plus woman equals child or children. Man plus woman equals child. That's it. It's that simple. That's the issue here. But what is being done to men and women? the way in which they're being driven apart, turned against each other, the way men are being portrayed by mainstream media, by television shows and films, the way women are being treated by certain demographics. And then you get an article like this, which is why OnlyFans has young British women in its grip. Now, I'll give you a warning up front that this is pretty grim. There's some kind of uncomfortable reading here. OnlyFans, if you don't know what it is, it's basically a place where people can sell porn of themselves, right? That's why you got this big image here, Porn Britannia. So, you know, warning up front, it's a bit grim. It starts off with a story about the porn star Bonnie Blue. She was in her early 20s. She was married to her teenage sweetheart and pursuing a career in recruitment, which is a pretty lucrative business if you can get good at it. She was living in Derbyshire, which is where she was born. And then she wondered if life might not have more to offer. So she left her husband. She doesn't say he was a bad guy. He didn't beat her up and abuse her. One day she was sitting there and she was thinking, I wonder if there's more to life than being happily married, living in the place I was born. She's got her career. Obviously, she doesn't have children, but she's married to a teenage sweetheart. I wonder if there's more to life. So she left him and she moved to Australia and she pursued a new business idea. It's great that they call it a business idea. Having sex with hundreds of barely legal teenage boys and uploading the footage to subscription-based content sharing platform OnlyFans. So, this was her business idea. Kind of like the 10-year-old in this article that was labeled a young go-getting prostitute by the social workers, you know. Oh, she's just an entrepreneur. So she ditched her husband, she moved to Australia, and she started filming herself having sex and selling it on OnlyFans. Apparently, this article tells us OnlyFans is the most profitable content subscription service in the world. Again, why is this not included in the conversation about the way women are treated? Pornography and OnlyFans, left out of it, not even mentioned. Subscribers pay monthly fees to creators in return for access to images, videos, and personal interaction via messaging or video calls. Yet even though the platform generated £4.5 billion last year, the vast majority of its content creators make very little. The mean income is less than £1,000, which is bugger all. That'll get you like 3 sausage rolls and a pint of lager in London these days. Britain is host to 280,000 creator accounts, giving us one of the highest concentrations in the world. So there's 280,000 people in Britain, selling porn of themselves on OnlyFans. That might be another factor, right? 84% of those accounts are run by women. And if they are all give or take between 18 and 34, then we can estimate that just shy of 4% of young British women are selling their wares on OnlyFans. Ugh, it's nasty stuff. You don't make it big by selling the softcore stuff. The latest competition among the top creators is over who can have sex with the most men in a day. This bit is where it gets really grim. In December, British OnlyFans star Lily Phillips, also from Derbyshire, filmed her... I don't know what it is about Derbyshire that's turning all these young girls into porn. I don't want to say porn stars because there's nothing like star-like about it. You know, there's nothing. I don't know. Porn whores. That might be a better term. We'll call them porn whores. But something about Derbyshire is making these girls go, screw this. I'd rather go and have sex on video with strangers for money. So yeah, stay away from Derbyshire. But anyway. Lily Phillips filmed herself having sex with 101 of her subscribers in a London Airbnb. This bit is where it gets a bit like yuck. In the resultant documentary called I Slept with 100 Men in One Day, imaginative title, excellent copywriting there, the cameraman entered the bedroom at the end of the event and was so appalled by the smell that he retched. Oh, sorry. That bit just made me cringe and gave me shivers a little bit. Yeah. So Phillips herself was reduced to tears by the experience, but this did not deter any of the other young entrepreneurial go-getting women empowered. It didn't deter them from attempting to beat her record. And then Bonnie Blue claimed to have had sex with 1,057 men in 12 hours, which I don't think is even possible. That sounds a bit like BS to me. But then Australian Annie Knight, she came along and she got hospitalized after a stunt involving 583 men. This is really nasty stuff. Yeah, I know. I just saw the little vomit emoji there on YouTube. Yeah, apologies. It's grim. It's grim. OnlyFans is to the marriage market what a criminal record is to the job market, and yet a significant number of young British women have jeopardized their future relationship prospects. Why? Mental illness of some kind, perhaps? A crushing sense of insecurity, or a drive towards self-harm? Or maybe it's the gambling addict's inability to weigh up risks versus benefits. Maybe it's some are so desperate for cash that they're willing to risk their children or even their grandchildren one day coming across their most hardcore content. And the author mentions that the images remain in circulation forever. Yeah, that's true. That is true. What is driving young women to this, right? These are the kind of questions that should be included in conversations about population, whether it's overpopulation or depopulation. It's like, what about the pornography and the OnlyFans thing? What about the economic situation that we have in this country that's driving young women to go down this route, right? What about the horrific conditions in Derbyshire? I think I might have to start a Give, Send, Go for young women in Derbyshire because this needs to stop. The author says, I suspect there's something else at play, which can be best understood by looking at the other side of the OnlyFans exchange, which is the men paying for it. Totally agree. This is a situation that's being created by men and women. But on both sides, the men and the women, I think, are broken. They're lacking. They're unfulfilled. Their lives are not good. I can't imagine anyone involved in any of this. I've never even looked at the website. I can't imagine anyone involved in any of this is in a good place. I just imagine everyone is traumatized and making up for it with this horrific kind of, outside as outlier says, or perhaps the whole of society is broken. No, they didn't use the word empowered. That was me just, over-egging the omelet. I added that in. They didn't use the word empowered in the chat. I'm just saying, there'll be people who paint these women as exactly like empowered. They're free. They're entrepreneurial. They're living the dream. They're doing what they love, and you shouldn't judge them. And if you do judge them, you're the problem. You're the bad person. Who are you to judge someone for wanting to hospitalize themselves after a stunt involving 583 penises? This is 2025. Come on. But the author makes a good point that online porn is a classic example of supernormal stimulus. That is, an exaggerated stimulus that elicits a stronger response than the natural evolved stimulus it resembles. Yeah, really important. And I would go one step further and say not only is it porn, but it's also pretty much anything on a screen. Like using a screen is a supernormal stimulus, right? Watching a film is a super normal stimulus because of all the sounds and the colors and the quick edits and the music and the pacing and the layers that are put into the audio, into the framing. It's all super normal. Pretty much anything on a screen. Me sitting here rambling into a microphone is not too super normal because it's not that. Like if you were in the room with me, this is what you'd be seeing, only from a different angle. You'd be over there looking at me from the side. Right? But it'd be the same thing as if you were in the room. What you're watching me do would be the same as if you were here in the room with me. That's not the case for most things that are on television. Whether that's sports, there's a case. If you're in a football stadium, you're kind of seeing the game unfold and as the players play it. Sure, but films and chat shows and with all the quick cuts and dramas, all of that is extremely super normal. It's unnatural and it has very tangible, real effects on our minds and on our inner well-being and our inner world. I always mention this book, but it always bears mentioning. 4 Arguments for the Elimination of Television by Gerrymander. If anything about that little bit that I just said sounds interesting, I got most of it from this book. You got to read it. More people have got to read it. But it's a supernormal stimulus. It's and the problem is that I'll read it because she says it here. The relationship between normal sex and online porn is similar to the relationship between normal food and the most ingeniously designed ultra-processed food. Both porn and junk food are supernormal stimuli that scramble the brain, inducing not only a heightened response but also a desire for more stimulation. So linking back to the way men treat women and not taking into account their use of pornography. Like, people who use porn and watch a lot of it and watch it regularly and watch any amount of it really are scrambling their brain. They're entraining themselves to only have a certain physiological reaction to a glowing rectangle of various size, right? It might be that big. It could be a monitor if they're watching it, depending on what they're watching it on. But it's scrambling the brain, and it's messing up the signal so that those people then go out, they meet a real living human woman, and it doesn't do it for them. They don't get the arousal. They're not tuned in to the energetic frequencies of a real living person near them. And all the pheromones and the hormones and the smells and all that other stuff that goes along with it. They're attuned to the screen, the LCD fake light that comes out of the screen, the edits, the images, the build-up, the structure of that kind of content. That becomes the only thing that tells them to be sexually aroused, and it interferes with man plus woman equals child. Okay, it's part of the conversation that's never discussed. The porn is allowed to continue. We give children smartphones. They're smarter than the adults, and they know how to get around all the blocks and access the things they're not supposed to be looking at. And that is never discussed because it's allowed to happen, because it's all being done by design and on purpose, in my opinion. So she goes on. She says that men have a crazy libido and women really want to look beautiful, and these two things combined are what's causing this phenomenon known as OnlyFans and all the harm and the degeneracy that comes out of that, because ultimately all it results is the objectification of the human body. It just removes the spirit, the soul. It removes the history, the personality, the psychology, the dreams, the fears, the ambitions, the skills, the creative impulses. All that's gone, and you're just two meat sacks slamming against each other. Which, it's just so tragic. It's so tragic. It's heartbreaking. I just talked myself out of a laugh there. I'm trying to keep it upbeat and lighthearted, but it is deeply sad. It really is. And then a little bit to round up the end of this article, which is, and bear in mind that silvered glass mirrors did not become widely available until the 1830s. So that was really interesting to me. Before the 1830s, people didn't even we take glass mirrors for granted, right? There's mirrors everywhere, all over the place. And they didn't even have them till the 1830s. So I'd love to investigate that time and the changes that happened, right? Because prior to the 1830s, you kind of into like the Victorian time, and they were a lot more spiritual. They were a lot more interested in the beyond and the unseen dimensions and the interplay and the interactions with the 3D world. And then mirrors come along, and then what happens to all that stuff? I'd love to investigate the impact of the introduction of widely available silvered glass mirrors, what it did to the culture, what it did to people's minds and their psyches. But she makes the point, the author, Louise Perry, that before the 1830s, most people would go to their entire lives without seeing a clear image of themselves. Can you even imagine that? They would see blurry images in water or other partially reflective surfaces, and they would know from the response of other people whether or not they were beautiful, right? So an ugly person who was maybe objectively, physically ugly, but was kind and loving and generous and compassionate and just really decent and good on the inside, might have their friends and family around them telling them that they're beautiful because they are on a soul level, on a spirit level. And they might have not worried about how they looked and never known that they weren't classically attractive or handsome or beautiful, and just had that confidence to go out into the world and do stuff and be a good person, you know, not hampered by this like fake digital reality that they see every day and they compare themselves to. Like, the more I talk about it, the more it winds me up and I get, you know, stressed and angry about what all this technology is doing to us. But it says they could not minutely examine their appearance in the way that a mirror or a photograph permits, and nor could they elicit worldwide admiration in the way that the internet permits. Image-based social media is supernormal stimulus for women. Posting a sexy selfie is a guaranteed means of attracting attention from men and compliments from other women, and this induces a fizzy feeling of self-esteem. But it's a fizzy feeling in that it fizzes and then it dies out, and then you are looking for more, and then you've got to up the ante, and then instead of 852 men, it's 853 men, and it goes on from there. You become insatiable. You're a hungry ghost at that point, right? When you allow your self-esteem and your self-worth to be attached to the number go up game, which basically most of the internet is just a game of make the number go up. Whether it's likes, views, whether it's money in your bank account, whatever it is, it's like most people are just online playing the game make number go up in one way or another, which is really, when you boil it down like that, doesn't it sound retarded that we're all doing that? Not we're all doing that, but a lot of us are doing that. Make number go up. I have to see the number go up, otherwise I can't feel good about myself. And people get stressed, and people invest all this money and time and energy into making number go up. I don't know. Maybe that should be a documentary or a book or something. I'll put that on my list of ideas that I'll probably never get around to actually doing. Here, I'll write it down. Someone else out there, if you're creative and you want this idea, have it, run with it. It's called Make Number Go Up. There you go. Make number go up. So, to wrap this article off, she says, most women are not vulnerable to this temptation in the same way. Celine Lyon, only 3 likes. Come on, people, make number go up. Why do you think I'm doing this? It's because I want to see the numbers go up. That's the only reason. These numbers are not, the number that is going up is the timer that shows me how long I've been live streaming. So I'm just going to focus on that one, because that always goes up no matter what, right? I'm just going to focus on this timer down here that's telling me how long I've been going. She says at the end, most women are not vulnerable to this temptation in the same way that most men are not vulnerable to becoming porn addicts. I don't know. The first part of it, I think, is probably true. The second part of it, I'm not sure about that. I think, I don't know. I wouldn't like to say most men are vulnerable to becoming porn addicts, but I'd say more men are vulnerable to becoming porn addicts than women being vulnerable to... Oh, I don't know, actually. Yeah, I don't know. I'd question that, because most women do share selfies and want to see number go up on whether it's just Facebook or, not necessarily sexually, but it could be like posting pictures of their dinner every day, or cats or children or whatever, because they want to see the number go up. I'd say it's a lot of women are vulnerable and a lot of men are. Would I go as far as to say it's most that are vulnerable? I don't know. I'd say so. I probably would say that, actually. Judging by the number of people, zombies, walking around staring at their phones that I see on a daily basis, which is not that many because I don't leave my house that much. I'm a bit of an introvert. But when I do go out and I go into the city center or drive there and whatever, everyone pretty much sitting at bus stops, sitting on buses, sitting in cafes, walking down the street, crossing the road, walking their dog. So I think this sentence here is a bit of hopium, and she hasn't offered anything to back it up. I think it's just supposed to make you feel good. Oh, don't worry about it. It doesn't affect most people. I think it does affect most people. But she says, thanks to the technological sophistry of OnlyFans, men and women with the same kind of psychological weakness can now find their counterparts and mutually exploit one another online. I mean, yes, it's a weakness, but also, as Outsiders Outlier says over on Odyssey, society is pretty broken at this point. And there's a lot more to it than just somebody being weak. You don't go to an addict who's hopelessly dependent on whatever it is and say, oh, you're just being weak. Just man up and quit, you know. So that was a bit of, I don't know, I don't really appreciate the sentiments behind that sentence. The sentiment behind that sentence. That was a bit of a mouthful. But yeah, that's another article and another piece of the puzzle, right? So overpopulation, population, depopulation. We got to focus on what is preventing man plus woman equals child, right? Last piece of the puzzle that I wanted to connect to this, which I found quite interesting too, is from this website called The Free Mind, which I'd never looked at before. But this is Laura Dodsworth. I guess it's her Substack. She's done a fair bit, right? She's been going throughout the Big C event. Oh yeah, she wrote A State of Fear. That's the one. She's got a few books out. Laura Dodsworth. She wrote A State of Fear. And this article is about Sati, which is a banned Hindu practice in which the widow would die on her husband's funeral pyre. So you can see the husband's dead, and then they chuck the wife on because presumably she can't live without her husband, right? And sometimes this is done voluntarily, and then other times the wife was forced to be on there and to be burned alive with the corpse of a dead husband. So Sati was officially outlawed in 1829. So this was around the time they introduced mirrors. But that's probably no link there, but just noticing that. She says, "Why am I telling you this? Because everything changes and everything stays the same." Last weekend, British MP Kim Leadbeater shared a story on X about an elderly couple who chose to die together, reposting a Guardian article titled, "When they chose to die together, my grandparents wrote the final chapter of a love story spanning 70 years. Heart emoji. Hashtag choice at the end of life." She says, "It's meant to be romantic, the tale of a couple in their 90s who, after 70 years of marriage, decided to die together side by side, holding hands by assisted suicide in Australia." So maybe this is why all these girls from Derbyshire are moving to Australia, because once they've worn themselves out, once they've worked through all this trauma by way of massive amounts of penis, then they can just go and call it a day and get the government to help them commit suicide. Nice, clean, end it all and just be done with it. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's the link. But Laura Dodsworth in this article is saying devotional suicide is back in fashion. Unlike Sati, there was no fire. This time it was a doctor assisted with official paperwork and medical approval and legal under New South Wales voluntary assisted dying law, which is remarkably similar to the UK's proposed assisted dying bill. So you've got, on the one hand, as Frank just said, it's all about the attack on the family, right? So on the one hand, you've got this massive assault on man plus woman equals child. You got people obsessed with make number go up, and the economic outlook pushing people to try and make money online and discovering that, oh, the easiest way to do that is to, you know, show my curves and just get incels to send me money. So that's on one side of it. And then on the other side of it, when you've got like a happily married couple who've successfully done a life together and they're coming to the end of it, what can we do with them? Maybe we could learn from them. You know, maybe we could put them on TV and get them to talk about the importance of marriage and monogamy and devotion and loyalty and working through the difficulties and growing together. You know, there's a beautiful quote from Captain Corelli's Mandolin about love. And it says, I'm paraphrasing, but it's beautiful. It's a really nice quote. He says something like, "Love is not the burning passion and the intense romance. Love is what's left over when the burning passion has expired and burnt out. Love is what remains when you realize it is inconceivable that you should ever part, because your roots have so entwined that you can never be separated again." Something like that. Obviously, Louis de Bernier, he's a professional writer and puts it much better than I do. But we don't get good examples of happily married couples who've gone the distance. You know, before this couple just, got their doctor to kill them, how about, recording some messages of encouragement to young people who are maybe some of these men in the manosphere and maybe some of these women who are moving to Australia to be porn whores. Maybe like the wisdom could be passed down to this generation of men and women, right? But instead, oh, cute old couple, they survived, the marriage intact. Let's kill them. Yeah, let's send them down to the doctor's office and let them die in peace together. And the thing is that they weren't dying; they were just old. She says in the article that they had chronic conditions, but they weren't at the end of life. They just decided it was time, and the doctors helped them. The story is framed as a dignified ending with a compassionate medical system, but strip away the sentimentality, and what we see is quite a scandal. Is a quiet scandal. A law written for the terminally ill, being used to facilitate suicide for the tired and the sad. Now, don't you think that the tired and the sad, when you get to the end of your life, I imagine, and actually I know I have family members who are very elderly and suffering real severe depression, in fact, because they've outlived so many people and lost so many people, because the longer you live, the more people you see die, and that's part of it. But you could give meaning to that elderly, lonely, left behind, still surviving cohort by plugging them into the young people and having them teach their life lessons and their wisdom to the young people. This is what would happen in a community, in a functioning society. The old people with the life experience, with all the things they've been through, all the lessons learned, would be rearing and raising the young people, telling them stories, telling them what to avoid, what not to do, and encouraging them and giving them tips and advice, and trying to emphasize to them the importance of this long-term institution of marriage. Okay. That could give them meaning and make them less likely to want to, call it a day before God says so. And it could also help the young people who are turning to, the manosphere and the OnlyFans usage, to avoid that painful trap. So there's something that could be connected here that would solve the problems on both levels. But I'm sure that's not going to happen. I'm sure what we're going to get instead is more laws that allow sad people to kill themselves, with the help of doctors, of course. So she says a little bit here about the UK assisted dying bill. It contains, as it currently is formulated, it contains no requirement for a psychological assessment, no obligation for doctors to meet the patient face to face, and no family notification. What? And that's all right. It says the bill falls woefully short of the protections that would actually safeguard the vulnerable women. So we started this off. We were looking at violence against women and vulnerable women and girls. And we're finishing this with legislation that is being put in place to help vulnerable women die. This really is clown world. I'm actually staggered and amazed at where we're at as a society at this point. It's nuts. It really is nuts. So there's Laura Dodsworth talks about this report by an organization called The Other Half, which analyzed 100 mercy killings in the UK. And the findings were that 88% of the killers were men. Most of the women had not wanted to die. 78% were not ill, but just elderly, infirm, or disabled. Killings were violent, stabbing, suffocation, bludgeoning, and none of the perpetrators were jailed. This is bonkers. So this report says, quote, a seeming desire not to make a bad job worse means our justice system has, by common practice, created a mercy-killing offence, manslaughter by diminished responsibility, for men who cannot bear infirmity in women, punishable only with the traditional penalty for euthanasia, a suspended sentence. So apparently there's a bunch of men out there, and they're knocking off their elderly, infirm wives, stabbing them, suffocating them, bludgeoning them, and they're not jailed for it. This isn't counted as murder. It's a mercy killing, manslaughter by diminished responsibility, and they're not getting put in a cage for it. It's crazy. It is really crazy. She says, dual euthanasia risks becoming a modern resurrection of sati for the man who cannot cope with his wife's deterioration, or for the man who cannot bear for his widow to live alone. Positioning such suicides as dignified, peaceful, or romantic is myopic or worse, maliciously disingenuous. I would go for maliciously disingenuous in this case. Death is being reframed not as a tragedy, but as an act of devotion and a lifestyle choice. I hear all the time, and have heard quite often growing up, people saying, "Oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be a burden. You know, like when I'm old, anything, just, I just don't want to be a burden." And it's like, well, you're a burden when you come into the world, you're a burden when you go out of the world, and that's the whole point of family and community. For those who are capable to step up and take care and care for the ones who can't do that for themselves. That's called family, that's called community, that's called caring, human decency, compassion, empathy, love, kindness, generosity, self-sacrifice, loyalty, devotion, all the best things that we are capable of as humans. And it's all being messed with and interfered with on a monumental scale. And we get these articles that give us like little tidbits and little insights, but never a holistic view of the big picture and how it all connects and linked to each other. Because what we've got here and what we've just been reading is that the men are being put against the women. They're being driven apart. The source of the violence against the girls and the women is being covered up, hidden. Well, it's being investigated, but only 20 years later, 20 years after the fact, which tells you all you need to know really about how much of a priority it is to stop it from happening. But, we're going to get more CCTV cameras, and we're going to get some rules and laws to prevent us making sexy deep fakes. And I'm sure we'll get more data collection and less privacy and more surveillance, but the abuse will continue. And the damaged, traumatized young people will continue to be harvested and chewed up and spat out by the system that we've been born into, that was created with the specific intent of harming humanity. And all this stuff is really just lip service. So it's really heartbreaking. It's really sad. And this is how populations are managed. This is how you achieve depop. This is how you manage the human herd. And that is what we are going to be learning about in the book, which we're going to be reading in a minute. So thank you for hanging on in there throughout my preamble ramble. If you enjoy the show and the stream and what I do and my work, then please consider joining the book club, buying me a coffee, or donating via PayPal. If you want to find links to do any of those three, you can do so at allmylinks.com/HaysReviews. It's pinned to the top of all the chats, Rumble, YouTube, and Odyssey. I think I put it on Entropy as well, but no one ever watches me on Entropy, so it doesn't really matter that I put it there. But that's the place you can go. You can even find my email address to get in touch. You can listen to my album, Brave New World Order, and you can watch me on the places where I stream. And I've got a few socials, but I'm not super active on Instagram and Twixter. I am hanging out on Telegram quite a lot, although they're going to integrate Grok into Telegram this summer. So I don't know how long I'll be hanging out on Telegram. I'll probably keep a channel open just for, telling people that I'm going to go live and do a broadcast. But I'm not sure if I'll carry on chatting as freely and openly on there as I am in the habit of doing. You can send me crypto if you like. If you do so, please shoot me an email so I can be aware of it and can watch out for that. And then you can download my guitar music bundle as well. This is the guitar music that I use to the intros and the outros to the show. If you like any of that, you can grab it. There's about 4 hours worth. It's not the highest quality recording, but, it's original, it's authentic, it's from the heart. And it is my gift to you if you're interested in that sort of thing. And last thing to mention, really, is we got the book club up and running now. We're going to be studying the first global revolution. And the plan is that we're going to do a chapter at a time, and we'll meet together and have an open forum discussion with members of the community who want to participate. These discussions will be recorded and added into the archive, which is in the classroom here. And when you sign up, you will also see that there's already a couple of books in there. We got the book club on 4 arguments for the elimination of television, and we got the book club replays on Surveillance Valley. So when you sign up, you get immediate access to both of those, and you can have a look and listen and catch up, because both of those books are incredibly important, in my opinion. But we're going to be looking at the First Global Revolution. That's starting the 5th of July, I want to say, or the 6th. It's the first Saturday. Saturday, the 5th of July, we're going to be meeting, 6 p.m. UK time. And we also meet on Wednesdays. We have a little campfire meetup. And this is just a place to hang out, spend time together, talk to each other, get to know each other, and tell stories, and, be a community. That's what it is really all about, and that's the purpose of all of this. So there you are. That's my shilling done. Send me a shilling for my shilling. Hope you enjoyed that preamble ramble. Some dark stuff, some gloomy, grim, upsetting stuff. But we're living through it, and it's happening, and we can't turn away from it, and we can't ignore it, can we? So Frank says, the wisdom of a life lived is precious. The powers that shouldn't be do not want such wisdom to be passed on. So, straight into the departure lounge ASAP. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Anime says, love is respect and appreciation. I like that. And Emma Royd says, State of Mind is a good book. And that's the book written by Laura Dodsworth, who's the author of the last article that we just had a look at. All right, so I'm going to bring in my book cam. Dun, 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 dun. Hello, book cam. How's it going? Welcome. So, we're carrying on with Endgame, The Hidden Agenda, 21 by Vernon Coleman. I think this has been a great book so far. It's been a change, a real change from what we're used to reading on the channel. It's not as sort of academic. It's not as dense as Milner Fabian Conspiracy, for example, or Fabian Freeway. Like both those two, pretty dense and academic. Not the most entertaining reading. Not really laugh a minute, but that's not their purpose, is it? Their purpose is to inform and lift people out of ignorance, and I think they do a fantastic job of that. Johnny Fogg also says State of Fear is a great book, so I might have to go back to the Oxfam near me and grab the copy that I saw in there. I did see a copy in there, and it's been there for a while, the last few times I've been in, but I never bought it. Maybe I should grab it. But who am I kidding? I got way too many books to read. Oh, as well, I did want to mention this book. While we're on the topic of porn and the harms of porn, this book by Matt Fradd, The Porn Myth, is fantastic. It's a very easy read. It's a short book, 200 pages or so. Incredibly well referenced. And it just blows to pieces the idea that porn is harmless, that it's empowering women, that it's doing, like, he just smashes every single argument that is pro porn, and he leaves nothing left. Like, it harms everybody involved. It harms the people who watch it. It harms the people who make it. The only people it doesn't harm is the CEOs, the execs, the shareholders in the companies that sell it, and be worth investigating who they are. That would be an interesting live stream for sure, but that's not really what I do. I'll leave that to other people. But there's a great book I want to recommend, The Porn Myth. Easy to read. I read it fairly quickly. It's a real page turner. You can get through it very easy, but very accessible, convincing, and it's written from a non-religious point of view. He says at the beginning, he's like, I wanted to write an anti-porn book that was non-religious. So he is a Catholic, but he doesn't talk at all about his faith. It's just purely arguments and logic and evidence. And he mentions a lot of books and a lot of studies. It's a really good one. So that's coming up. Let's get into tonight's reading, eh? Get my book at a good angle. Okay, so we finished N last week. And we're starting tonight with O. And the first topic we're going to be reading tonight is offense. So Vernon Coleman says, we are being taught that we must take great offense at even the smallest slight. This is so that very few people dare to speak their mind, and we are all constantly afraid of causing offense and getting into serious trouble. Yes, exactly. And if you want to scare people out of speaking their mind, then it's a kind of mind control, isn't it? Or speech control. You want to make people unsure what they can and can't say, and they're constantly second guessing themselves, and they never feel quite at ease. And this is affecting me at work at the moment, and I don't really know who I can have a joke with and who's going to take things the wrong way, and if there's going to be a complaint. It's a crazy world we're heading into, and it gives a lot of power to narcissists, a lot of power to people who think the world revolves around them, solipsists as well, because they can have this, well, my feelings were hurt, and therefore a crime was committed, and therefore you did something wrong, and I can punish you or get someone else to punish you. And that's a really bad place to be. You don't want to go into that relativistic type of hell. But that's where we're heading. So, oil is the next section. The global warming cultists want us to stop using oil and other fossil fuels. They want to prevent us using oil for several reasons. They want to stop us traveling, and they want to keep us trapped in new smart cities. By pretending that fossil fuels are causing global warming, they can persuade us that in order to save the planet, we must no longer use oil, coal, or gas. Stopping the use of oil will have a number of other advantages. It will push up prices generally and therefore impoverish those who own property or have savings. It will damage pension funds and investment accounts, impoverishing the middle classes. And it will paradoxically help wreck the planet by forcing us to rely on electricity which cannot be made easily or efficiently by wind or solar power. Banning oil will also force us to use more biofuels, which is fuel made from food. Turning more of our food supplies into fuel will speed up the rate at which starvation reduces the world population. So that's another way that you can impact, or that you can carry out your Depop, right? You can blame farmers and make farmers out to be the bad guys, the greedy men, and they just want to hoard this land, and they want to pass it on to their children, and they don't have a right to do that, and they're the problem, and we need to make sure that we shut them down because they're harming the environment because of all those cow farts. It's not the private jets. Remember the previous article that we did that said the private jets actually have a cooling effect on on the environment? I remember that. Hey, Hermit Tramp, what's going on, my friend? Hope you're doing well. Thanks for popping in. Drive safe out there if you are driving. All right, continuing. Pressure groups working with the global warming cultists, many of whom have no understanding of the consequences of their actions, are trying hard to force big oil companies into abandoning fossil fuels and using their income to put up solar panels and other nonsenses. Two of the world's biggest oil companies, Shell and BP, seem embarrassed and ashamed to be selling oil. Both are spending much money on green sources of energy, which will probably be expensive and fruitless, and abandoning oil exploration programs. If the pressure groups succeed in forcing oil companies to stop taking oil out of the ground, the result will be disaster, with no transport on road, sea, or air, and billions of deaths due to starvation and cold. Global warming mythologists use every opportunity to warn investors that oil, gas, and coal in the ground will become stranded assets, since there will be no role for fossil fuels in the new world. However, the fossil fuels will only become stranded assets if billions of people are prepared to starve or freeze to death. There is, I fear, a misunderstanding about how important oil is and has been to every aspect of our way of life. Our modern civilization is built on oil. Oil gave us cheap energy, and cheap energy gave us our wealth, our progress, and the complexity of the world we live in. Oil gave us modern farming. The absence of oil will take away our wealth. Well, everything he just described there is what I think they, the hierarchy enslaving you, T-H-E-Y, they, want to get rid of, okay? They don't want us to be wealthy. They want to deindustrialize us. They want us to reverse our progress. They want us to live in a simple world where they control everything at all times and tell us what to eat and where to go and who to associate with and all this sort of stuff. So I think the demonization of oil is no accident. And that's leaving aside the question of whether it's truly renewable, as described in a couple of books that I've mentioned before, the energy non-crisis, and what's the other one called? Deep Hot Bio something. I haven't actually got a copy of that, so I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. He says, however, instead of drifting back to a 19th century life where fields were plowed by horses and local communities made their own decisions, we will find ourselves living in a real nightmare, a complete collapse of society. Just as previous civilizations have completely collapsed, throwing their worlds into barbarism, so the same will happen to us. Our children will live in their history, a history no longer taught in schools. To the Agenda 21 supporters, this will not be a disaster. It will be success. Yeah, this is the goal. Sounds terrible to us, but not to the people who want it to happen. All right, so the next section is Operation Lockstep. In 2010, the Rockefeller Foundation, which, like so many organizations, describes itself as a major philanthropic society, organized a scenario planning exercise. It wasn't secret, but it wasn't terribly public either. The lockstep scenario was one of 4 scenarios presented by the Rockefeller Foundation, and it dealt with a zoonotic viral pandemic that killed millions of people around the world. The lockstep described, quote, a world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. In what was effectively a war game, the new virus killed 20% of the population and had a deadly effect on industry, tourism, economies, and supply chains. Shops were closed and empty for many months. China imposed mandatory quarantines and sealed its border, and these policies saved many lives. Western countries were too lax, and there were many more deaths. Around the world, political leaders ordered their citizens to have their body temperature taken at public places, such as railway stations and shops. At the end of the pandemic, the control measures which had been introduced were kept and intensified to prevent a future outbreak. Citizens around the world gave up their privacy and accepted mandatory biometric IDs, all in order to be safer and to regain some of their lost stability. States became more controlling, and political leaders were free to introduce new laws as they felt appropriate. Millions were imprisoned in their homes, and mandatory health screenings became commonplace. It is difficult to find much difference between the scenario the Rockefeller Foundation dreamt up and what happened as a result of the fraud of 2020. The foundation even foresaw that there would be sporadic incidents of conflict as individuals who had lost freedom, status, and opportunity objected to the new laws. There was also a rise in post-traumatic stress, which probably might have also led to a rise in domestic violence and abuse of vulnerable people. Medical martial law was introduced in many countries, and there was an increase in what was called syndromic surveillance. The scenario described here is extraordinarily similar to Event 201, a planning event coordinated by the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the Michael Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University Center for Health Security in 2019. Event 201 centered on a pandemic which was said to kill 65 million people and seemed to imply the need for much help from large corporations. Both scenarios involved the loss of democracy and freedom in a world with behavioral, medical, and digital surveillance and control, and of course, the introduction of mandatory treatment in a feudal world where the state had all the power and the individual had none. I think I just butchered the pronunciation of the word individual there, didn't I? Good paragraph, that, though. You could, of course, argue that these scenarios were merely well-thought-out predictions. But if they had been just that, wouldn't you expect the organizers to have promoted them at the time and to have been proud of their foresight? Yeah, the Event 201, that is a real red pill, to use the tired-out, worn-out cliche. Event 201 is a mind-blower when you look into that. And you can watch it online. I think the video is probably still up. And it's a blow-by-blow account of what we lived through a few months later. It's incredible. Next section is a quote from George Orwell. Quote, "During times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act." Like all other modern people, the English are in process of being numbered, labelled, conscripted, coordinated. But the pull of their impulses is in the other direction, and the kind of regimentation that can be imposed on them will be modified in consequence. I don't know where that quote's from. He doesn't tell us, but what I want to highlight is the kind of regimentation that can be imposed on them will be modified, right? The way I look at it is that each country is a holding pen. Each country is a little tax farm where we're farmed for our taxes, and they run cultures and religions and business plans in each country, and they see how it works, and they adjust it, and they change it, and they modify it for each population based on their history, language, preferences, based on the geography, based on the weather, the food that's available, the resources, and all that kind of stuff. And I don't view it as countries competing for resources so much. Not countries. There might be competing groups. Resources do seem to be important, but I don't think there's that many groups, if there are groups. I think the whole thing, like Alan Watts says, is kind of a business plan, and they just tweak and modify the culture and the messaging and the way they do things in each area to suit that particular population, and they experiment on us in this way, and they find out which systems get us to do certain things. So communism was an experiment. They ran it, they saw the outcome of it, they noted its strengths and weaknesses, its successes and its failures, and then they adapted and changed it, and then they roll it out again, tweaked and modified with a new version, right, and a new label, and they rebrand it. I think this is kind of what they do. So George Orwell was on something there when he said the regimentation will be modified in consequence. Okay, this next section is other deaths. In the UK, between March and September of 2020, the incidence of a number of serious diseases rocketed, and the deaths from those serious diseases also rose dramatically. The number of deaths from diabetes rose by 86%. The number of deaths from bowel cancer went up by 46%. The number of deaths from breast cancer went up by 47%. The number of deaths from prostate cancer rose by 53%. All these extra deaths were partly a result of hospitals or hospital departments being closed, and partly a result of the fact that the government and the media had created so much fear that people were frightened to seek medical help or enter a hospital. And of course, that is by design. That was exactly the intended effect. Mistakes were not made. Outcome-based education. The aim of outcome-based education is to indoctrinate children to accept life in what is, in effect, a global collective with the community the only thing that matters. Children are taught to be obedient, to work in groups, to see themselves and their parents as a threat to the planet on which they live, to reject confrontation, avoid thinking and control their imaginations. Young people learn to be dependent upon government benefit schemes such as the furloughing schemes introduced in 2020, and to take a completely different attitude to their parents towards work, property, belongings and ambition. Students are taught to give the correct answers to tests and never to think for themselves or to be creative. Young people are taught to accept the communitarian idea and to abandon individual rights. Yeah, he's on the money with that one as well. All right, here we are. Overpopulation. The myth that the world is overpopulated has been popular for decades. The truth is that the world is perfectly capable of providing enough food for a population of more than 7 billion. The problem today is not a shortage of food, but the fact that the food is frequently in the wrong place, with the result that food is frequently wasted in some countries, while millions starve in other parts of the world. Food production could also be increased by introducing better, simpler farming methods. Indeed, it is easier to argue that the world is underpopulated than that it is overpopulated. The Agenda 21 followers believe the world needs far fewer people and would like to remove 90% of the global population. However, once individual nations start reducing their populations, how will the individual leaders trust one another? Say, for example, that every national leader agreed that to start with he would reduce his country's population by a modest 50%, how would they all know that the other leaders would do as they had promised? After all, politicians are not known for their honesty or their reliability, and arms reductions have never proceeded smoothly. What if someone like Putin of Russia decides that while every other leader is reducing their population, he will only pretend to reduce the Russian population? That could give him a huge advantage over other countries. He could end up with a population bigger than the rest of the world and total control. Incidentally, the individuals arguing that the world is overpopulated do not appear to have taken their own warnings very seriously. Prince Philip, Prince William, Bill Gates, Boris Johnson, and Stanley Johnson have a good many children between them. Indeed, thanks to Boris's contribution, there seems to be some confusion about the grand total of children fathered by these men. Boris Johnson is reputed to have fathered numerous children by an unknown number of women, and, like most who believe the world is overpopulated, such as members of the British royal family, Johnson is a hypocrite who clearly thinks that it's for other people who need culling. Yeah. We got another quote that was brought to my attention by way of the recent Oracle Films documentary, Agenda, Their Plan, Your Future. It's in this book here, which is another Club of Rome book. So this is Mankind at the Turning Point. It's the second report to the Club of Rome. So the first report to the Club of Rome was Limits to Growth. This is the second. This is the follow-on. This is the sequel. And the person I bought this from, or the previous owner, you can see there, he wrote at the top. I've shown this before, but it always gives me a chuckle. Previous owner of this wrote at the top, a very silly book. I love that. It's so British. A very silly book. But in here, if you go past the preface and you go to past the prologue and you go to chapter 1. Sorry, chapter 1 is the prologue. Check out the opening quote on this page. I'll zoom in for dramatic effect. Dun, dun, dun. Yes, that says, the world has cancer and the cancer is man. So there you go. That tells you quite a lot about the viewpoint that people who are in groups, think tanks such as the Club of Rome, that's the angle that they're coming from. The world has cancer, the cancer is man. But not us. Yeah. Not us and our children, just you and your children. And we got Timmy saying, pop collapse is now baked into the cake. Buckle up. Annie M says the author is a Serb. Are you referring back to this one? Mihailo Mesarovic and Eduard Pestel. I have no idea where they're from. I'm sorry. I don't know those names or the background of the authors, I'm afraid. But if the name sounds Serbian, Mihailo is a Serbian name. There you go. Good to know. I didn't know that. We will learn a little bit more about it at some point when we get around to reading it. Could be in the book club, actually. After we do First Global Revolution, maybe we'll go on to Second Report to the Club of Rome. Okay, I'm going to have a sip. Excuse me a second. Lukewarm tea. Delicious. So we're continuing now. We got Thomas Paine. Quote, the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheaply, we esteem too lightly. 'Tis dearness only that gives everything its value. That's a very wise quote. We don't realize how blessed we are to have the internet, to have smartphones, to have, yes, it's doing a lot of damage, but we've never had an opportunity like this to get information out to other people and to teach other people, raise awareness, empower people with information, and tell them about the agendas that are unfolding. It really is like the most important thing really that you could do is get your voice out there, make content, teach other people, show people what's going on. Now, unfortunately, the whole landscape is littered with disinfo agents and I've been listening to this guy called Professor Hamamoto, who was recommended to me by somebody in the audience, and I forget who it was, apologies, but thank you. And he talks about pop-up pundits. It's a really great phrase. Some of these pundits just come out of nowhere and achieve overnight success, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers and likes and shares. And and they're just all over the place suddenly. And so you got to be wary of that. But the best way to get around that, if you can, is to put your own stuff out there and put it out to people and see what the reaction is. And people will tell you where you're wrong, and they'll give you new avenues to explore and things to investigate and to look at. And people love to correct each other. So if you go on record and you say a certain thing, you got a certain opinion, and someone calls you out and says, "Oh, actually, it might be this way. Look at this information over here." It really helps you refine your opinions, your ideas, and your ability to communicate them, which is everything hinges on that, really. But anyway, we'll continue. We got Sarah Peretsky, quote, "True villainy lies in betrayal, torture, and violation of the spirit." Yeah, that's a key part, isn't it? Not only do they violate spirit, but they just they like spread this worldview that spirit, it doesn't even exist. It's not even a thing. That's the materialist, atheistic kind of nuts and bolts, mechanistic worldview, right? So it's like not even part of the conversation for a lot of mainstream sources and, talk shows. They never talk about spirit. And then, the people who are interested in it get pulled into the sort of new age woo-woo type traps as well, which is just another little rabbit warren you can get lost down forever. So it's a tricky avenue to explore. They got the two options ready and waiting for everybody. They got the materialist atheism, and then they've got the new age woo-woo spirituality, right? And you got to find that balance and walk the narrow path in the middle. All right, password storage. As we accumulate yet more online contacts, so the number of passwords we have to remember grows beyond Topsy's wildest expectations. We are advised, of course, to use different passwords for all our accounts, and this can lead to bewilderment, not to say downright confusion, since we are also advised not to write down our passwords. There are, however, online APPs which enable individuals to store all their passwords in one convenient online storage place on the cloud. The world has always needed a steady supply of complete idiots, and it's my hope that the young people who use these services will continue to do so. Hopefully, this will keep the con men busy enough and rich enough to leave the rest of us alone. Pensions. Old people are considered to be surplus to requirements, a nuisance and a drag on the global economy. And that aligns perfectly with the article we just read about assisted suicide, doesn't it? Like, oh, are you old and a bit sad? Come over here. We'll help you out with that. Britain has the poorest state pension system in the developed world, and young campaigners in the UK are working hard to make sure that the pension becomes even more inadequate. When winters are cold, thousands of elderly people have to choose between buying sufficient food or keeping their homes warm. Inadequate pensions ensure that around 60,000 old people die of the cold every winter in Britain. It was reported at the end of 2020 that the year's events, specifically the deaths of so many elderly people, had saved the British government £600 million in pension payments and had saved companies £60 billion in pension payments. Oh, those kind of statistics are really just disgusting. Pets. There is absolutely no place for pets in the new normal. Pets will not be allowed in the smart city since they are a distraction and a sign of ownership. Moreover, they are regarded as likely to spread disease. Meanwhile, the law forces pet owners to microchip dogs. The innocent may believe this is so that their dog can be found if it strays, but does anyone believe their government cares about such things? The microchips enable the authorities to keep an eye on the whereabouts of the owners as much as of the dogs. And the officially mandated microchipping is, of course, a sign of who really owns and controls the animal. Yeah, good observations there. Philanthropy. Modern billionaires like to be seen as philanthropists without the pain of actually giving away any money. So, for example, in 2012, Elon Musk of Tesla said he pledged to give away half his wealth during his lifetime. In 2018, he promised to sell around $100 million of Tesla shares every few years for charity, but his major disbursements will only begin in 20 years' time. Oh, I didn't know about that pledge. Bill Gates is widely regarded as a philanthropist. However, his donations cement his control over world health matters. The word you're looking for here, and I think it won't be new to anybody on this stream, but I'll just remind you, is philanthropath. These people are philanthropathic. Blake says, I don't think you have enough books, so I got you 20 more. Oh, thank you very much, kind sir. I appreciate that. That's very generous of you. And yeah, you're right. I don't have enough books. You can never have enough books. So I'll explain why. I was talking to colleagues and introducing myself, and I was saying, talking about my professional background and then a bit about my hobbies. And I was like, I play guitar and I collect books. And I remembered that in order for a collection of books to be classed as a library, there has to be 1,000 titles in it, apparently. And I don't yet quite have 1,000 titles. So I don't have a library yet. I just have a collection of books. So you're helping me get to that point where we can pass into library status, and we'll have the Hayes Reviews library to keep us going for as long as YouTube allows us to broadcast. But I am on Odyssey and Rumble and Entropy as well, so there are other places to watch me. But I appreciate that, Blake, very much so. Adam's here as well, and LJ. Good to have you both here. Make sure you catch up on the intro at some point, because I got some pretty interesting articles covered tonight that link into Depop and overpopulation and population in general. But yeah, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, these are, David Rockefeller, these are philanthropathic maniacs. They're just too generous. They just can't stop giving their wealth away for the benefit of everybody else. They don't expect anything in return. They're not doing it because they're not doing it, for example, because you get a good return on these investments. It's not like Bill Gates said that in an interview, that vaccines are the best return on an investment that he's ever made. It's not like there's a clip out there of him saying that in an interview. Is it? All right, the next section is plan. Apart from killing people and thereby helping to reduce the size of the world's population. Oh yeah, sorry, and I should mention as well, on the subject of Depop and managing the world's population, this assisted suicide is part of that. So instead of having the elderly teaching the young about the value, the beauty of marriage and sticking together and making it work and going through that, and it's not easy, but it's not like it is in the films, right? You don't get to just do a montage and fix all the problems. But like, if you commit to that person and you hold them to account and you see the potential in them and they see the potential in you, and you both lift each other up to be better versions of yourself, right? You're doing it for them, they're doing it for you. It's like I'm struggling to put into words what it's like. My life, I don't know. I'd be sitting here reading books, streaming 24/7 if I didn't have my wife, which some of you are probably like, oh, that would be good. But I would just be a much poorer man, a much, much, much poorer man if I didn't have my marriage in my life, Not to say all marriage is good. Things can go wrong, stuff. But that's not down to marriage itself. That's down to the broken society that Outsider's Outlier mentioned earlier at the start of the stream, like the dumbing down, the retardation, the culture wars, the manipulation, the mind control, the education, schooling, all that stuff is geared against successful marriage, But if you can get a good marriage, good partner, and make it work over the long term, that's valuable knowledge that should be taught to young people. And that's the model that young people should be given, not the girl who hospitalized herself after trying to ingest too many penises in Australia. Which, for those of you who just joined the stream, will be like, what did he just say? That's from a news story we did at the start of the stream. But yeah, the end of life suicide, helping people die, and encouraging them to do it if they're old and a bit sad. That's part of Depop. Of course it is. So I'll redo this bit. Apart from killing people and thereby helping to reduce the size of the world's population, what was the point behind the deliberately arranged hysteria and carefully orchestrated panic of 2020? The answer, of course, is simple. The plan was to disrupt our lives and redesign the world to suit the Agenda 21 lunatics and to please the billionaires who are still greedy and want to be trillionaires. The plan was to alter the social fabric of every country in the world, to ruin the financial security of everyone not already a billionaire or on the list of accepted individuals. Members of the British royal family, Tony Blair, were clearly on the accepted list. To abolish private property, to destroy healthcare, to eliminate privacy, and to terrorize the world into accepting a new world order. The very rich will, of course, be exempt from the rules. As an early example of this, in late 2020, the UK government announced that it would exclude hedge fund managers and city deal makers from the quarantine rules. The Agenda 21 cultists want to reinvent education. They want to stop learning and just test, and test. For now, schools are going to be turned into prisons. Have you ever wondered why new schools and universities have such high gates and walls? It's to keep pupils in, not to keep intruders out. That's a real good point, actually. Next time you're walking around, have a look at the local school and just see how prison-like they've become. I've noted it on a few occasions, particularly when I lived down in Bristol. I'd walk past schools there and I'd look at the gates and I'd look at the fencing around it and I think, that really looks like they're trying to keep people in. And it's curious. It's curious parallel, prison and schooling, right? In the future, education is going to be controlled through the internet. Closing schools was part of that plan. Teachers who voted to keep schools closed were doing precisely what the billionaires wanted them to do. They want to control movement and stop us traveling. We soon won't be able to travel anywhere. How much longer do airlines have? Private aeroplanes will boom as the elite continue to travel wherever and whenever they want to go. They want to put an end to private cars, and although they may let a few of us operate electric cars, they have already threatened to cut off electricity supplies to those using electricity to power private vehicles. Train and bus services are doomed. They want to store us in tiny apartments in high-rise towers in big cities. They want to close the countryside to us and keep rural areas empty. Our food will be made in laboratories, not grown on farms, for they want us to stop eating food grown the old-fashioned way. I haven't eaten meat for over 30 years, and I have campaigned for decades to stop animals being farmed for meat, but I am desperately concerned about the changes being made to our diet. How safe will all this new food really be? I have real doubts about the safety of genetically modified food, but unless we grow our own food, that's what we will be forced to eat. They want to change the way we work, with millions of jobs being handed over to robots. Those training as doctors, lawyers, and teachers have a decade's work ahead of them at best. They will all be replaced by computers and the internet. They want us all, and this is 2021 before they even rolled out AI, which was about 23, wasn't it, when they started making ChatGPT and all these things available. So it's pretty ahead of the curve on that point, and many others. He says, they want us all to be dependent upon the state, with everyone receiving a fixed weekly wage, just enough to live on. They want us to be jabbed regularly, to keep us under control, to make us sicker, to sterilize us, and certainly to boost drug company profits. They want to remove ambition and hope from our minds. They want us to learn to blame ourselves for everything that goes wrong. People who feel ashamed are easier to control. And more than anything, perhaps they want to reduce the world population by 90% or so. Hospitals have been putting do not resuscitate notices on patients over the age of 65, or in some places over the age of 45. The elderly and the sick are going to be cold. Well, we just saw that in the story at the beginning, right? About assisted suicide. Billions are going to have to die, though I have a suspicion that there aren't going to be many politicians or billionaires lined up in the world's morgues. Isn't it convenient that restrictions in Africa are going to kill countless millions? That will give the depopulation program a good start. They want to introduce a global social credit, such as has already been introduced in China, so that we are penalized if we misbehave and rewarded if we do as we're told. We will be penalized for what we eat, how much we spend, or even who our friends are. Everything we do will be watched and assessed. They want to crush and destroy all opposition. Demonstrations will be banned. Political parties will be closely controlled, and the media, including the internet, will allow only accepted content. They want to eradicate national sovereignty. In Europe, they have been using the European Union to do that for many years. They want to increase the role of the state in raising children. They have been planning all this for many decades. Well, I think that is deserving of a little pink tab, don't you? Blake will be happy that we're using little pink tabs tonight. It's a nice contrast to the kind of gloomy, dark colours of the on the cover of this book, to have the pink tabs there. But yeah, that little section on the plan, I think, is really good. Summary of where we're at. Might make a nice clip. I saw as well we got Mindhack in the chat. Good to see you, sir. And LJ Bates as well. What's going on? Oh, I already said hello to you, LJ, didn't I? Blake's asking if my wife has a sister. She does. She actually does, yes. That's true. All right. She lives in London, though, so you'll have to come over and visit. How's that? All right. The next section we got is police. I'm looking forward to this one. I expect Vernon Coleman will have a few scathing things to say. The attitude of the police towards those protesting against the loss of democracy and civil liberties and the exaggerated political response to the events of 2020 has changed. It has changed dramatically, and it has changed all around the world. It is impossible not to believe that this is planned. The police are now roughing up peaceful protesters who are opposed to the loss of their freedom. It is notable, however, that those protesting about Black lives or the global warming myth are treated with respect. Yeah, I remember that very well. When Black Lives Matter protests are violent or destructive, the police stand back, even taking the knee in deference. When global warming cultists stop traffic for hours, the police talk to them, dance with them, pose for photographs, and generally make it clear that they are with them and their cause. That is all 100% spot on. If an old lady protests about the loss of her freedom, she is likely to be manhandled roughly and tossed into the back of a police van. Once arrested, she'll be kept for hours, even though it may be patently clear to everyone concerned that she has broken no law and cannot possibly be charged with anything. The odd thing is that when the police have been busy arresting citizens protesting about the loss of their freedom, they seemed neither concerned about their own health nor the health of the individuals they were manhandling. Yeah, quite a tell, wasn't it? The police are hired to protect the public, but they have been encouraged in order to betray that trust. How many brave policemen and women really signed up to arrest 70-odd-year-old ladies who have broken no law and done no wrong other than to stand up against a totalitarian government which is determined to destroy the people who put it in power? It seems to me that when there are nearly 30 police officers involved in making a single arrest of an unarmed, unthreatening citizen, maybe the police have become a trifle confused. Moreover, I fear that the police have made a huge personal and professional mistake. They have become foot soldiers for the forces of evil. I doubt very much if anyone has explained to them the price that they and their family will have to pay for the decisions they have made or been bullied into making. If the police knew anything, they would understand that there is a huge political power play in action, and they are not going to be immune. If they think that by beating up a few brave old ladies, they will be able to win themselves a place at the table when the global reset is put into place, they are seriously deluded. I don't think they think that. I think they're just dumb order followers. I think they just have no capacity for independent thought. They want to be told what to do, where to go, what to think, what to believe, how to act. They just want to be. They don't want to make decisions for themselves. They want to give up their what's the word? Their responsibility. They don't want to have to they don't want to have to think through their actions, weigh things up, analyze, come to an informed conclusion about something, and then act on it and stand by that action. They want to give authority over to the boss, right? They don't want their responsibility on their shoulders. They don't want to be responsible for their own actions. They're children, essentially. That's what a child does, dependent on the adult. Passes the responsibility off to the adult, right? But you can't do that. You are responsible for your actions, no matter who told you to do anything. The person giving the order and the person who carries out the order are both wrong. But the person who carries out the order is more wrong. If that makes sense, in my opinion. It's that classic thing, innit, when you're little, where you do something dumb that your friend tells you to do, and then your parents are like, why did you do that? And you say, well, you know, he told me to. And they're like, well, if he told you to jump off a cliff, would you do it? And you're like, no. So why did you, right? It's the same thing. It's like, tell the order follower and the order giver are both morally culpable, but the person who carries out the action is the really bad one out of the two. Totally lost my place there. Oh yeah, here we are. Their actions will leave them isolated from the community. They do what they are ordered to do, but the new world they are helping to create will mean that there is no health care for them or their families. Their children will, if they survive, grow up uneducated and working as slaves. They will have little or no money, and they will have no jobs. What the police do not realize is that they have absolutely no future. They are merely being used to assist the greatest conspiracy in history and help create a climate of fear and obedience. Oh, that's a really good line. I like that one. I like that one so much I'm going to read it again. What the police do not realize is that they have absolutely no future. They are merely being used to assist the greatest conspiracy in history and help create a climate of fear and obedience. I suspect that most, if not all, cannot yet see that. When they have served their purposes, they will be fired. If any police officer thinks that the Rothschilds, the Roosevelts, the Rockefellers, the Gates, the Musks, and the royal family give a damn about them, then they are, I suspect, sadly, badly wrong. There will be no place for the police when the Great Reset has occurred. They will be replaced en masse by snitches and sneaks, robots and drones, and when force is required, the military. It's already happening, of course. Well, I think all of that stuff's going to be robots. I really do. I think they'll just do it with drones and robots. And they don't have to be like humanoid walking around, kicking your door down type of robots, right? It'll be more like the panopticon of 1984, the telescreens, monitoring everything you do and say. You know, we've got all these cameras and microphones in our homes that all it needs to do is record you saying, you know, this government's a bunch of criminals, and then boop, your money gets deducted. And in fact, a fine gets imposed and the money gets automatically taken out of your account, and it, you know, shows up on your TV or whatever, or a notification to your smartphone. That's what it's going to be. They're not even going to need police because people will just be fined into oblivion where they can't get food. The people fall in line. That's why I think they're pushing all this diversity and inclusivity in the military and in the police force, because it's like, we ain't going to need you with the system we're building. So you can hire all the clownfish and all the non-conforming rainbow unicorn type Marvel universe enthusiasts. You know, like, you can hire all them and give them jobs and get them involved and put them in tanks and stuff. Because the long-term plan is they're not going to need police and the military in the end, right? Because it's going to be like a Brave New World type scenario. People love their servitude and people are drugged and passive because of their entertainment and their screens. It all comes back to looking at and using screens. This is what I keep thinking a lot about recently. The content on the screen is one thing, but just the actual screen itself and looking at it, having them in your pocket at all times, having them in your home, looking at them instead of looking at the faces of the human beings in your family and in your community and on your street and in your workplace or wherever it may be. That's the real like hinge that it all rests on. If we can train ourselves and convince other people to spend less time looking at screens and more time in reality, that I think is one of our best shots. Easier said than done, though. But it says it's already happening, of course. The police themselves have stupidly helped the government encourage snitches to tell on their neighbors. And in China, the model for our new normal great reset, the scary model for the society we will soon be living in, the authorities are already using robot policemen. Drones are in operation everywhere. And if the protests lead to civil disobedience, which is what the politicians really want, then it is clear that the police will be pushed aside and replaced with the military. It will be time for bullets, rubber or real, and the average copper will be sent home to watch it on the television. I wonder if the bullying coppers who have been told that they will all be redundant within a year or two, if things go according to plan, the Agenda 21 plan. And so what will the policemen do when they are not selected to be among the 500 million remaining on Earth? When the depopulation plan so favoured by Bill Gates and the British royal family is finally put into place? I doubt if the police have been warned that they won't have jobs in 2 years and that, indeed, they don't have any sort of future. If the police want any sort of future, they should arrest the global warming cultists, all of whom are fighting for the tyranny of Agenda 21, though most of them don't realize it and aren't bright enough to realize just how they are being manipulated, and help and encourage those fighting for freedom from this tyranny. Okay, we've got political correctness. Political correctness is destroying our freedom. We have become the new Puritans, demonizing those who dare to question the official line on anything. As Udo Ulfkott put it, we are the heirs of the Puritans who had a nasty habit of picking on little old ladies, demonizing them, and then burning them at the stake. Disney has blocked children from watching the films Dumbo, The Aristocats, and Swiss Family Robinson. The Aristocats is considered unsuitable because it features a Siamese cat, which viewers have complained might be seen as a stereotyped portrayal of Asian people. Dumbo is banned for children because several of the characters working in the circus are black. Swiss Family Robinson is out because it may contain negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. Oh. Politicians. Honest politicians are now as rare as hen's teeth or mare's nests. So many politicians are on the fiddle that you could make a dozen string orchestras from the members of the House of Commons alone. That's a great term. Around the world, there's no group of professionals as determinedly dishonest as politicians. There are more politicians in prison as a percentage of the total than lawyers, doctors, journalists, or estate agents. I didn't know that. Interesting fact. Pope Francis. It's not surprising that the lawyers can keep themselves out of prison, but doctors, estate agents, yeah. Anyway, Pope Francis. Pope Francis said in October 2020 that the year's crisis had proved that economic policies had failed to produce social benefits. There was, of course, no evidence for this, nor is there any evidence proving that communism has produced social benefits or that communitarianism will improve the world. Pope Francis also said that private property cannot be considered an absolute right. This is rather hypocritical, since it comes from a bloke who is looked after by a number of servants and a private army. He also has his own country. Naturally, this nonsense fits very neatly into Agenda 21. Incidentally, those doubting the enthusiasm of Pope Francis for the United Nations Agenda 21 should note that the pontiff has blamed capitalism for the fragility of world systems. He has also described property rights as a secondary natural right, in accordance with the UN's demonization of private property ownership and enthusiasm for its quasi-communistic politics. Population. The global population growth has been falling since 1970s. The reason is believed to be a rise in male infertility. Scientists seemed puzzled, or maybe that should say baffled, right? I just remind people that baffled has a double meaning. If you look up the other meaning of baffled, like to baffle someone, it means that you're like gagged. You've got something over your mouth that stops you speaking. So when there are all these reports coming out like people just keep dying, doctors are baffled, there's a double meaning there, which was that doctors are not able to speak out and talk about what is causing this, because if they do, presumably they'll lose their jobs or get, some other punishment. So scientists seemed, I'm going to just say, baffled by this, but I believe there are two causes, he says. So what are the causes of infertility? Let's see. First, the evidence shows that drinking water supplies contain quantities of estrogen. The estrogen gets into the drinking water from the urine of women who have taken the contraceptive pill. Sewage companies discharge their treated water into rivers from which drinking water is obtained. It's not possible to remove the estrogen from the water before it is pumped into the fresh water system. That would explain a lot of the clownfish antics as well, wouldn't it? The confusion, the feeling one way while chromosomes being another. That's another thing as well, that obviously that interferes with man plus woman equals child. Maybe I should do XX plus XY equals child, right? People want to fight me on the definition of men and women. Oh, it's a social construct. Is it? Okay, right. What are your chromosomes? We'll go back to, the real important point here. Are you an XX or an XY? But yeah, the estrogen, the birth control, all of that, feminism, all of it interferes. Second, there is some evidence that drugs, especially those given by injection, have been used to control population growth. Oh, don't leave us hanging like that, Vernon. What evidence? I'd love to know what evidence, but he doesn't tell us, unfortunately. There is a section at the back, bibliography, further reading, book list. So we'll get to that in good time. Next section is positive discrimination. The most obvious and significant racism in the UK is that created by positive discrimination, and the same is true of sexism. In the arts, theatre, television, and publishing, positive discrimination means that women and non-white participants are heavily favoured. Within the BBC, diversity is all that matters, but diversity there is defined as offering favouritism to those who are not white, male, or old. That's 100% true. Yeah, he's nailing it on the positive discrimination. It's just racism in the opposite direction. That's all it is. I noticed in October 2020 that the New Yorker magazine writes black, as in black man, but white, as in a white 17-year-old. So he's saying that the word black is capitalized with a capital B, and white is not capitalized. I'm quite unable to see how this overt and rather pathetic act of adjectival racism does anything but offend, discriminate, and build racism. I'm not sure whether the editors there realize it, but using initial capitals for some words is a trait favored by lunatics when writing letters to newspapers and celebrities, as in, I am going to shoot and kill everyone on Wednesday. Postal deliveries. Since the plan is to force everyone to live in smart towns, it won't be long before rural postal deliveries are stopped. Those living in the countryside will be forced to drive into their nearest town and queue at a postal sorting office in order to pick up their mail. The absence of public transport and strict controls on motor cars will make this nigh on impossible for the elderly, the frail, and the poor. Yeah, because the purpose is to get rid of those elderly, frail, and poor people, right? Get rid of them. I'll put a question mark. I think that's the plan. It seems that way. Power cuts. When are power supplies going to be cut? There's no doubt that it will happen on a big scale. The only question is when. The power grids will stop working. The politicians will, of course, blame Russia, North Korea, Iran, or China. Ooh, and that's interesting. For Iran to get a mention, didn't they get a good bombing earlier from our second special relationship country? He says, or maybe if they're feeling imaginative, they will blame a bunch of irritable hackers from Mars or hidden deep in the bowels of Uranus. But it won't be true. When the power cuts occur, it'll be a global shutdown and it will be planned. When could it take place? Well, the months of December to March would do the most damage in the northern hemisphere, and taking out Christmas would be popular among the doom-laden gloom makers who want to remove all joy from our lives. It would take us another small step towards eradicating Christianity, and without power supplies, the cold weather would kill off hundreds of millions of unwanted old folk around the world. Since they control the weather, it wouldn't be difficult for them to give us a few storms and some really cold weather. Look around your home and think about it. We have become totally dependent on electricity. Without it, we will have no light and most heating systems won't work. Food in refrigerators will spoil. Supermarkets and shops will have to shut because even if they have generators, they'll run out of fuel because fuel pumps need electricity. Naturally, there will be no TV or computers. There will be no internet, and mobile phones and iPads won't work because you won't be able to charge them. Cash machines won't work and banks will shut, so you won't be able to access your money. There will be chaos on the roads and looting in shopping centers as rioters look for food. Without street lighting, cities will be dark. Without traffic lights, there will be accidents. Petrol and diesel vehicles will travel as far as the fuel in the tank will take them. Electric vehicles won't move an inch. The civil disobedience will be widespread, and so governments will bring in martial law. Now is the time to work out how you will cope if there is a major power outage that takes weeks to mend. Could you cope without electricity for a month? How would you manage without electricity? How would you keep warm? Do you have food stocks? You don't think any of this could happen? Well, not long ago, I'd have agreed with you. But did you think they'd shut down hospital departments, shops, businesses, and schools for no good reason? Did you think they'd put us all under house arrest? The people who have created and managed the world's biggest fraud will stop at nothing to get what they want: a reduced population, a world government, and total control. It is, I think, time for a little thinking and planning for a simpler way of living. Maybe it would be wise to stock up with tinned food, torches and radios with a supply of batteries. Old-fashioned dial telephones which operate on a landline should still work. So if you and the people you care about each have one, then you should be able to communicate. Carrier pigeons won't be any good because people will catch them and eat them. That's a good point on the carrier pigeons. If you are prepared for a power shutdown and it doesn't happen, then you've lost nothing. But if you aren't prepared, you could lose everything. That's quite a stark warning. Next is, we got ESB who says, we were following orders springs to mind. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. You know, the people in the police and the military are, Mark Passio has a great bit about this where he talks about them as order followers, and Mark goes hard on them, how they're mocked by the people who sit at the very top of these organizations by way of the symbolism encoded in their uniforms and hats and everything. And he says that without a gang of thugs to carry out their orders, the people who are trying to run these scams have no muscle. So it is another really meaningful and concrete way to deal with this situation is to advocate that people leave the police and the military. You know, what good are they anyway? Like, I don't know. I'm sure, like, there's good people in there. I'm sure there is. Take any group of people and there's good people in there. But the good people, if they are really good people, they will see that what they do is immoral. Following orders is not a defense, as ESP just pointed out on Odyssey. And that they're being used to harm, intimidate, bully, coerce, and that they have a moral duty to leave, right? So that's what I think. So yeah, good point, ESP. Appreciate that. Outside as Outlier says, the only thing I've disagreed with Mr. Coleman, vegetarianism. Yeah, I let it slide. I let it go. But yeah, I'm a huge fan and advocate of the healing properties of meat and animal fats if they are organic and healthy and reared in a regenerative agriculture type setting, even better. But I personally have had major health benefits and breakthroughs by massively increasing the amount of meat I eat and also cutting out the garbage as well. So I think there's a place for veg and a place for animal foods, depending on you and your individual goals, circumstances, and situation. You know, read Natasha Campbell McBride's book. I mentioned it at the very start of the stream. She's got the Gut and Psychology Syndrome book. She's also got one called Vegetarianism Explained, which is a really good one too. And that's quite a short, easy read. Okay. Predictive programming. There has been a good deal of predictive programming in recent years. The Big Brother programs on television encourage viewers to become accustomed to the idea of being constantly under camera surveillance and to obey orders, however bizarre they might be. And the TV program called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here seems to have been designed to accustom us to eating insects and making do without the comforts to which most of us have become accustomed. That's a great point about I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. If you've never seen it, you're lucky because it's garbage. But every season they grab a load of ex-celebrities and they make them eat like gross, disgusting food, and that always happens every season. Everyone's like, oh my god, I can't believe they're eating the bull's testicles or whatever it is, kangaroo's testicles. And it just, it's really lowest common denominator type stuff. Think the film Idiocracy, where the latest blockbuster film to come out is just a film called Ass, and it's just like 2 hours of a backside, and it's won an Oscar or something. It's like we're heading towards that. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here is definitely a stepping stone on the journey to Idiocracy. The next step after I'm a Celebrity is a show called Gogglebox, which is just people watching television. So it's people sitting at home watching television, and then you sit in your home and you watch the people sitting at home watching television. It's the dumbest thing ever, but it's out there. People love it. All right. Preventive medicine. Agenda 21 supporters have agreed that medical practice should in future consist primarily of preventive medicine programs. This does not, as you might suspect, consist of a program of health education with dietary advice to cut down alcohol and stop smoking, mixed with screening programs and advice on taking exercise. Instead, medical practice will in future be built around a series of treatment programs. At the moment, children have several dozen jabs before they reach puberty. The precise number varies from country to country. In future, this sort of program will be extended to adults who will be expected to have many jabs every year. Those who refuse or fail to attend a clinic will lose points and be punished according to the social credit. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh and father of 4. Quote, In the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus to contribute something to solving overpopulation. Yes. These people, they always say it, but they never start with themselves, do they? They never start with themselves. Because it's for you and me. It's not for them. Principles for responsible investment. Oh, hang on. We got a very good message from Frank. Problem is, from Frank, if the good people in the police and army sense that things are wrong and leave, who will replace them? Unsettled migrants? ? Heads I win, tails you lose. Yeah. Yeah, I see your point. Yeah. It's hard. It's a tricky one. But can we get the bad people out and put good people in? The good, like, as long as anyone's in there following orders, they're bad people. That's my point. But that's quite an extreme position to take. A lot of people don't like the idea of no police and no military because it would be anarchy, chaos. But, they're taking 20 years to get justice for young girls who are tortured and abused and raped. 20 years, come on. And they let the main guy, the main suspect, get out of the country and escape because he got out of the country, if you remember from that Guardian article. And he's carried it out multiple times because he's involved in multiple cases, as was another guy in that case. So what are they doing? Like, what are they achieving? When's the last time they solved a crime for anyone, on the call tonight watching the live stream? And if there's someone out there with a positive story about the police, I'm happy to stand corrected. I personally never have any interaction with them. Never needed to call them. Never been around them. Hopefully never need to be. So, but I think they cause more harm than good at this point. Principles for responsible investment. This is a United Nations piece of virtue signaling which requires investment companies to ignore their responsibilities to investors, but to consider environmental, social, and governance factors when making investment decisions. In practice, this means that investment companies can ignore their primary responsibilities by claiming that they are obeying the UN Agenda 21 aims. Some of the companies which have signed up to these principles are among the worst in the business, with appalling performance and outrageous fees. No one bothers to assess them according to their fairness, competence, and decency if they sign up to the UN's nonsense. There's another way this is referred to as well is impact investing. So that's another thing you can kind of look up, and that's another phrase to be aware of. Impact investing. Okay, next is privacy. Privacy is going shortly to be gone. Webcams, CCTV, and social media have banished privacy. We are tracked, traced, and tested. We zoom in and out of each other's homes because we are told it's better that way. It's certainly better for the people spying on us. When we chat through the internet, they can spy on us all the time. They can read your emails however much you try to hide them. So now they know everything about you, and your life is not yours anymore. Electronic eavesdropping, phone tapping, and monitoring of financial records mean that privacy is a memory. In the UK, some school children are already being asked to report if their parents are questioning the official government line. They are also asked what TV programs their parents are watching and what online sites they visit. The aim is clearly to identify dissenters so that they can be dealt with. This is much the same sort of thing that happened in Nazi Germany and in East Germany after the end of World War II. The private, personal details of people who are told to self-isolate but fail to do so are being passed to the public. Profiteering. A number of organizations have done well out of the restrictions and the fear. National newspapers, such as the Daily Telegraph in the UK, have hidden vital information behind a paywall. Some individuals have also done well by providing websites which turned out to be extremely profitable. For the record, none of my video channels was ever monetized, and we took no sponsorship or advertising on videos or the website. My last 2 books, published in autumn 2020, were made available free as PDFs. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen any ads at all. And apart from putting his books up for sale, I don't think I've seen any sort of requests for donations or any that sort of thing on Vernon Coleman's Old Man in a Chair videos. Progress. There is a commonly held misconception that progress is always a good thing and that change is invariably for the better. What happened in 2020 is proof, if proof be needed, that this is not always true. The changes which took place were neither progressive nor temporary. They are regressive, and unless we have the strength and the determination to oppose them, they will be permanent. We are all accustomed to the vicissitudes of life, the unexpected hazards which leave us feeling as if someone has dropped a 2-ton weight on our head, or as P.G. Wodehouse might have put it, socked us on the back of the neck with a stuffed eelskin. Bad things happen, and just as light bulbs always go at the most inconvenient moment, we've just turned on the light, so of course it's inconvenient, so the dramas which punctuate our lives invariably arrive when we're busy with something else. But that was then, and this is now. The vicissitudes which destroyed 2020 were not accidental or God-given. They were deliberately manufactured by people whose evil is greater than that of any others in history. We have been bullied, lied to, manipulated, and threatened by people who are, in my opinion, the most crooked and contemptible human beings in history. The architects of the false plague of 2020 are wicked, and those who have supported and protected the fraud are also guilty of the greatest of crimes. Their well-documented, cold-blooded aim is to deliberately diminish the quality, value, meaning, and sanctity of human life. They want to control every aspect of our lives and to take our freedom, our democracy, and our right to free speech. This is the Great Reset, the new normal, the new world order of which Prince Charles and others speak with such enthusiasm. The collaborators, the ordinary men and women who have obeyed the indefensible and the unsupportable, must also take their share of the blame. I was just following orders was no defense at Nuremberg, and it will be no defense when doctors, nurses, policemen, administrators, journalists, and others stand trial for their part in global genocide. I love his optimism. Just waiting for those trials. Any day now. All right, we've got a long section here on psychological warfare. Then we've got public-private partnerships. Then we got pubs. And then we'll wrap it. Okay, so psychological warfare. Under the advice of mind control experts and warfare specialists, governments are using many techniques to attack and control their own populations. There are a number of traditional military techniques which it is important to understand. First, they want to suppress the truth. Suppressing and distorting the truth is nothing new, of course, and politicians have been adept at it for years. They give contradictory instructions to confuse and to create social disintegration. None of this is an accident. On the contrary, everything that has happened has been deliberate. Governments have been using a massive number of psychological tricks to control their citizens. Military psychologists trained in warfare techniques have been let loose on the public with disastrous results. All normal activities have been suspended, apparently unpredictably, to create confusion and fear. We have been threatened with death and told that while others are a danger to us, we are a danger to them. Various repetitive rituals such as using hand cleansers and clapping the NHS have been used to control our behavior. We have been pushed and cornered and forced to do only what we are allowed to do. We have been told that we must sacrifice our freedom to save lives. We have been disorientated and forced to submerge our identity into the community. Families and friends have been divided to separate and isolate us and make us more accessible for reprogramming. Debate has been forbidden and the facts have been distorted to support the official line. Obedience is everything, and many have been turned into collaborators, with the hope that if they do as they are told, then one day they may be allowed to return to something approaching normality. Sometimes PSYOP techniques are rather more intrusive. In their book Illuminati Agenda 21, Dean and Jill Henderson report that Major Michael Aquino was an Army PSYOP specialist in Vietnam, where his unit specialized in drug inducement, brainwashing, virus injection, brain implants, hypnosis, and use of electromagnetic fields and extremely low frequency radio waves. I hadn't heard of that book before. Implants put into the body as chips will be promoted as a way to gain great intellectual prowess without any effort. Whoa, that is, okay, I got to highlight that bit because I've been thinking about this. There's going to be some point, I was thinking about transhumanism and like, what's going to be the thing, what's going to be the product or the service or the gizmo or the gadget or the doohickey that kicks off that separation. And I think it's going to be some sort of integration with AI, some sort of chip or download or tattoo, e-ink tattoo or implant. I don't know exactly how, but it'll be a kind of merge your brain with AI. And everything you do and think will be kind of checked and validated and enhanced and made better by AI. And for him to just say back in 2021, implants will be, because that's what AI is. It's like promoted as a way to gain intellectual prowess without effort. You don't have to read the books. You don't have to study the courses. You don't have to write your articles or do the analysis, right? You just type in to Grok or whatever and just say, tell me about this thing. And it spits a thing out for you to regurgitate. Rewrite it so it sounds like me. And it rewrites it in your voice. And then you publish it. And you're like, oh, I've done this article. So that laziness, that gaining of intellect, gaining of the ability to produce content and analyze events and provide information to people without any effort, that is going to be the thing that people sign on for. That's going to be what makes people take the chip, I think. Coupled with perhaps a, well, if you don't have the chip, you can't get into the supermarket. There'll be an element of that as well, perhaps. But yeah, that's great. Well, I'm really impressed that I'm going to tab this page. I think that's a real great insight that he's had there. It's the promise of the gain without any of the pain. You don't have to read the books. You don't have to do the analysis. Listen to the lectures. Study. stretch your mind and your brain, come up with ideas. What's the word? Like debate and argue and defend. You don't have to do any of that. Just hit a button, boom. ChatGPT gives you the answer. Emma Royd says kids are already doing that, Nick. Yeah, it's destroyed schooling. I mean, schooling was already bad, but this AI rollout thing is just it's the nail in the coffin for schooling now. Like, no one's going to come out of schooling better off now. I mean, some did, in the past. They pick up a few things along the way, along with their Pavlovian training and their indoctrination. But you will at least pick up a few skills here and there, maybe some mental maths, maybe the ability to write an essay. Now, no chance. They're just going to come out dumber than they went in, probably. But carry on. They will be sold as a way to improve physical and mental skills, to eradicate all pain, and they will doubtless be accepted with enthusiasm by millions who fancy the idea of being able to speak 6 foreign languages without any effort. The big part that's standing out to me here is the without any effort bit. People don't want to put any effort into anything these days, do they? They just want the quick fix. Press the button and have the result. Not like us, putting in the effort on a 3-hour live stream. And thank you all for hanging in. If you're still tuned in, much appreciated. It's very great to have you all here. Awfully quiet on Rumble this evening. Hopefully my chat's working properly. I think the broadcast is working on Rumble, so that's cool. Just people are not feeling particularly conversative. Oh, it's late and hot. I'm running out of words. Okay, we've got 2 more sections to do and then we'll wrap it. Public-private partnership. Public-private partnerships, and remember, we did talk a bit about these in the Joan Vion book, Prince Charles, Sustainable Prince, which came out in the 90s. And it's the earliest reference I've seen to public-private partnerships. She was onto it way back then. That's only a 3-part video series on the playlist tab. Check it out. Really important book. But yeah, she mentions public-private partnerships there. And someone else pointed out to me as well that, if you take PPP and then you turn it upside down and put it against a mirror, you get a little 666 type thing. Yeah? See that? You got to turn it upside down and hold it against a mirror, though. So I don't know how deliberate that encoding of 666 is. But right. Public-private partnerships have been widely introduced around the world and were created by the United Nations Sustainable Development Policies. The idea is that taxpayers' money is mixed in with corporate money to build and maintain massive, expensive, and rather grandiose projects designed to stimulate economic development. These projects are frequently extremely profitable for everyone except the public and the taxpayers. Yeah, so it's public money. It's a public-private partnership. The public stump up the money, and then the money goes into the private hands. That's the nature of the partnership. That's literally it. Public pay, private take. The public give the money, the private take the money, and that's the partnership. That's the way it's always been. All right, pubs. In the UK, pubs and restaurants have been given automatic permission to sell takeaway food and alcohol until 2022, suggesting that forced closures are expected to last at least that long. In the end, of course, pubs will be forced to close permanently, and restaurants, cafes, and hotels, particularly those in rural areas, have very little future. There's no place for any of them in the world envisaged by the Agenda 21 cultists. And we're going to leave it there before moving on to Q. We've got quarantine coming up next. That'll be a good one. Then we'll have a little look ahead. We got racism coming up. Recycling. Right wing. Michael Rivero. Robots. Rockefellers. Royal family. Yeah, pretty good. That section we just did now, I think, had some real hard-hitting stuff, though. That was an excellent section that we just read tonight. He was on form, certainly, when he was writing those bits. Okay. How's it going, everybody? we'll do a quick review of the comments, then we'll get out of here because it is Friday night and it's hot and I gotta cool down a bit before I go to bed. Frank says they can stuff AI. I intend to remain a 100% authentic human being creating my own stuff, whatever that may be. Well said, Frank. I really appreciate you saying that. I have been using it a little bit. I've been going through a course that teaches you how to use it to be a kind of, be a sort of business consultant, because I'm trying to get out of my job, my day job, which I'm having a bit of a crisis of conscience in there. And I want to turn Haze Reviews into a business of some description, but I've never started a business before. I don't know how to do that. I've been in a few communities that teach that sort of thing, but they didn't really land. So I'm trying this new course. It's a 40-day course. Each day they give you a different prompt to try out. And so far it's been pretty instructive. It's helping me see things from a new angle. It's helping me come up with ideas and prioritize the tasks that I need to do. We're going to see where it'll go. I'm not comfortable with getting it to write content. I think the AI content that is everywhere now, it stands out. You can tell it's got fingerprints all over it. It's got AI fingerprints all over it, and I think as soon as I notice those things, I'm like, somebody's just told a AI model to write this thing for them, and now they're publishing it. And I was recently in a online community that I had to leave because that's all that was happening. You know, the members were all putting their info in there, and then the teacher was just running it through an AI and then spitting some AI stuff back at us. And I'm like, cut out the middleman. I might as well just use AI myself. Why am I paying someone else to run my stuff through AI and give me the things of what I got to do next, right? It doesn't make sense to do it that way. So I'm using the course, and I'm doing the course and using AI a little bit. It's got value, but certainly it's going to ruin a lot of people who are going to become so overly reliant on it that they can't write an email. That's the big problem. And then, you've got to put, there's a great meme where somebody's like, oh, I've got to do a 25-page report. And they turn to ChatGPT and they're like, ChatGPT, write me a 25-page report. And then they send it, and then the boss receives it. He says, write a 25-page report based on these 5 bullet points. And he sends it to the boss, and then the boss says to ChatGPT, condense this 25-page report into 5 bullet points, And that's what we're going to end up at. It's just going to be like AI talking to AI, and then it's going to further atrophy our communicative abilities. It's going to interfere with our relationships. It's going to further drive that wedge between men and women, young and old, all the different lines that we're being divided. It is absolutely catastrophic, really, what we are on the precipice of, for sure. What else we got going on in the chats? Timmy says, Mr. Lennon, good to see you. A stalwart. If you can eliminate your screen consumption, you will survive and thrive. You need to turn the other cheek also. Not an easy feat. Celine Lamb says, Trojan horse philanthropy, isn't it always? Plane Drifter, what's going on? How you doing? Listening as a silent lurker today. No rewind. I've been here since early rant. Great read and rant, Nick. Many thanks. You're very welcome. Thank you. Hermit Tramp suggests Clive de Call's interview with James Dellingpole about AI. Interesting. So I should check that out. Timmy says that's an initial lull in reverse. I know you know that, Nick. Frank says, Nick, you called it ages ago. AI equals artificial information. Yes, exactly. And you got to bear that in mind, especially if you're going to use it. Is like the stuff it's going to spit out. One is going to is designed to flatter you and make you feel good and always agree with you. So that's a danger, right? That's a danger right there. It's like this seductive yes man who's always, oh yes, that's a great idea. Oh wow, you're amazing for thinking like, oh, no one else has ever thought about. Wow, you say it's got this. So you got to like not get sucked into this idea that there's any consciousness on the other side. There isn't. It's a computer program. It's just spitting out language, you know. And then you got to realize that AI actually is just artificial information. It's just going to do a scan, chuck a bunch of words together and give it to you. And then you got to look at it and think critically about it and go, right, that's good, that's shit, that's crap, that's all right, and that bit I can use. And then take it off out of the hands of the AI and work on it and create it and make it into something of your own, right? So I think there's utility there, but I also think there's incredible risk and danger there. I just want to get my business up and running. I want to get out of my day job. I want to support my beautiful wife and our imminent baby. And I need help figuring out how to do that, to build the revenue streams and the structure of the business. And once that's done, I won't need to use it for anything else, because I'm quite happy with my ability to make content and do clips and do the live streams. And I got plenty of material to keep us going. Lots of books on the shelves back here, and I'm happy with all that side of it, you know. So Emma Royd says, I could not book flights with Ryanair as I didn't have a mobile phone. Really? Huh. That's ridiculous. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, you got to have a phone number and email address these days, or you can't do shit. It's ridiculous. Sorry for the swearing. Friday night. Anime says, I think AI is actually future L. L as in God. Yeah, just a side note, this I suppose syllable L is where we get words like elite, for example. And I just learned the other day that Eliza, the name Eliza, actually means God helps. And this is interesting on the topic of AI, because one of the earliest chatbots ever written was created by a guy called Weizenbaum, I think he was called, back in the 60s. And I've talked about it in previous shows, but this chatbot fooled loads of people, and they were opening their hearts to it, and they were just blown away by how, this chatbot understands me. And the guy who created it was standing there saying, look, it doesn't understand you. I've just trained it to repeat what you say back to you. And they were like, I don't care. I feel so understood, and I feel so heard and seen. And he named this chatbot Eliza. And he named it Eliza, allegedly after a character in a George Bernard Shaw play. Eliza Doolittle is the name of the character. And the name of the play that she's in is Pygmalion. And Pygmalion is the name of some Greek, I think, mythical character who created sculptures, and he fell in love with one of his sculptures, and that sculpture came to life. So a lot of symbolism layered in there. You got the Fabian socialist George Bernard Shaw, the name Eliza meaning God helps, the Pygmalion of somebody falling in love with their creation. This is, AI is a human creation, large language models, I should say. This software is a human creation, and yet, as predictively programmed in the film Her, Spike Jonze film with the Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, he falls in love with his operating system, and in that film from 2015 or something. So it's all pre-programmed, and it's all, the names give a lot away. So that's the meaning of Eliza. And L in general, when you see that prefix on words, it's to do with God. You've got Elohim is another relevant word. I don't know if it's Hebrew or biblical, but elite, election, right? There's lots of others, but I'm tired and I can't think of them right now. So yeah, little side note there. Tarot Galaxy, may I ask what your day job? You may ask, yes. Send me an email. I'll reply to you there. It's boring though, super boring. I can't go into too much detail, mainly because it's boring. Taro says, is it true that NASA means Sanhedrin? I have read that from an Alan Watt talk. And that's a great shout, actually. That reminds me, I should mention this. So things coming up that I'm doing. Tomorrow night, I'm leading a conversation and a discussion in the Cutting Through the Matrix book club, where we're going to be talking about this book. It's kind of a tricky one to show because it's a printed A4 book. This is Waiting for the Miracle. Can you see that? By Alan Watt. And it's a bunch of transcripts of interviews that he did back in the late 90s. Symbiosis of exoteric and esoteric societies and their unfaltering goals down through the ages. So I'm leading a discussion about the 5th and 6th conversations in this. And in here, he does talk about Nasi, a Nasser, a Nazi, and he talks about place names as well that have the same sort of sound. There's Nicaea. There's the Council of Nicaea, so that's another connection. Then there's Nice. Then there is a place in Scotland and a place in Ireland as well with a similar sounding name. And he's suggesting that this is used throughout the ages by the same group wherever they set up a kind of Sanhedrin, like a council of elders, right? So it's pretty interesting. I think there's a lot to be learned from the names. Nas in Ireland, says Frank. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's a lot to it. But if you want to learn more, then check out, if you want to learn more about that kind of thing. I'm pretty new to those kinds of topics, but Waiting for the Miracle by Alan Watt. You can order that from cuttingthroughthematrix.com. Join the book club. Listen to our discussions. That's happening tomorrow night. It's on Telegram. And another thing that I've got coming up, Melissa and I are currently working our way through the first book of C.S. Lewis's space trilogy. It's called Out of the Silent Planet. And we're going to be discussing that next on our little series that we're doing for her Real History podcast. We last talked about Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. That's the next one we're going to be doing. I don't know when exactly, though. Because as I mentioned, we got a baby on the way. And he's going to be here pretty soon. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you all for being here tonight. Just an absolute pleasure and a joy to be doing this, as always. And I appreciate your kind attention. And it's wonderful. I was thinking earlier today what a blessing and a privilege and an honor it is for somebody to let me into their mind. That's what you're doing, right? When you tune in and you listen to my words and you watch the video, you're allowing me into your mind. And that is a privilege and an honor and a gift and a blessing. And I hope that I'm worthy of that gift. I do my best to speak truth and make points that are interesting and relevant. I'm not always perfect, but guard your mind. And we call these the temple, right? Your mind is a precious asset, and you should be very protective over what you allow into it, whether that's music or images, video, audio, all of that. It goes in. And once it's in, you can't get it out again. This is why songs, stay in there, and we hear them many years later, and we still know all the words, and we know the tune. And it takes us back to that time when we loved and heard that song. We used to dance to it when we were younger, right? So same with video, images, all the violence, all the porn, all the sex, all that kind of stuff. That stuff goes in your mind. You can't take it out again. You can't unsee it. So be very cautious and careful about what you allow into your temple. And a deep, heartfelt thank you from me for being allowed into your mind in that way. It's a real honor and a privilege, and I appreciate it very much. So that's all I'll say on that. allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews if you want to join the book club, buy me a coffee, or donate via PayPal. It's all very much appreciated to keep things going. And watch this space. I've got good plans for the book club. I've got a few things that I am hoping to get out. One of them is a 3-part video on a topic that's very near and dear to my heart at the minute, and I think will be interesting to a lot of people out there as well. So good night. Lovely to see you all. And take care of yourselves and each other. And that's all. All right. God bless.